So many classic confrontations, no need for added ingredients, but there is extra spice. Where are you, Alexander Isak? Where will you be in a week's time? That is a question that hangs in the air. But given away recklessly by Cher. And Pope is called into urgent action by Florian Wirtz.
See the defenders of Newcastle just giving Nick Pope a high five there, trying to play out. They didn't get it. And the lovely little touch inside here from Wirtz. See, he's going for that top corner. It opened up from lovely.
Jones went down. Gravenberch. He's got room to take aim and completely catch Pope out. Well, Newcastle will wonder how. It's come totally out of nothing. But Ryan Gravenberch caps his first appearance of the season with a goal. Van Dijk with Gordon tearing into the challenge, which Kerkez did not take kindly to. It's a little mini flashpoint. I sense a very unpopular decision is on its way.
I agree with
the majority here.
My final decision is red card to Newcastle United.
The clarity from the referee will fall on largely deaf ears. Newcastle with the numerical disadvantage means maybe their intensity levels will decrease quite significantly, although Tonali doing his best to try and haul Ekitike. Opened up for Gakpo. Ekitike! He is lethal! The striker, long coveted by Newcastle United, has pounced again in Liverpool red. And within seconds after half-time, the game in an iron grip for Liverpool. This is the kind of situation that Newcastle have to make the most of. Joelinton beaten to it by the scorer of Liverpool's first goal, Gravenberch. Bruno Guimaraes! Hope rekindled for Newcastle. Down to 10 they may be. Down and out they are not.
Well, you said they're going to have to make something happen from set plays and throw-ins, and that's exactly what Newcastle United have done.
Tonali moving for the short one, and Alisson having to react swiftly. Where's that going to drop? A timely fist from the goalkeeper. Burn back in there. Joelinton jousting at the far post, and a hefty thump away from Konate, but it stays in play. Never happened to you, though. Osula in behind! Newcastle have a striker who can score! And his name is Will Osula! An astonishing comeback from the 10 men! Oh, Szoboszlai leaves it, and Gamo, what a moment! What a moment! The 16-year-old with almost the last kick has sent all in Liverpool red into ecstasy. They may yet take their striker and And tonight, they have taken 3 points from Newcastle in the most sensational fashion. Rio Ngamoa, a much talked about talent, has walked onto the Premier League stage for the very first time and produced a quite staggering moment to win a quite compelling contest. Newcastle United 2, Liverpool 3.
Get in the rig of all
Of Europe again.
and more on sport.com/commentary, because sport never
Apply 18 plus GambleAware.
It's a brilliant goal from Ryan Gravenberch.
Bruno in the team, Eva in the team, we'll have England's winger Anthony Gordon in the team.
Anthony Gordon has just gone wiring into Virgil van Dijk. Let's hear from Simon Hooper, who's going to announce his decision.
My final decision is red card for Newcastle United number 10.
Anthony Gordon has been sent off by Simon Hooper.
You don't have to send this to me. It's all paper nonsense. You haven't got a clue.
Comes back towards Ekatike.
Oh!
He hits it low and hard off the inside of the post, and it's the perfect start for Liverpool at the beginning of the second half. A brilliant effort from Ekatike, who continues his fabulous scoring record in English football. Nala comes into the box. It's left. Ngamoa to finish it. He's won it. Rio Ngamoa, the teenager, has come up with a moment right at the end of a dramatic game at St James's Park, and he himself has written his name into folklore with a dramatic winner.
All I wanted to say, like, he scored so many goals.
Nothing who stuck that together?
Nothing to do with us, that. That's harsh.
Terrible, mate.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
Wow, what a game.
Jay, insane
Premier
game.
League is back.
Insane game. Yeah, you couldn't take your eyes off it. Liverpool were terrible, by the way. Let's have it absolutely right. The best side lost. Anthony Gordon's the reason they got beat. It's not Liverpool's fault. But Liverpool shown what it's like to go on and win titles. They did the same last week, 2-0 up. Managed to go and win it 4-2. The same tonight. Liverpool got out of jail. Make no mistake about it tonight. Liverpool was second best. Newcastle, some players, Bruno does not deserve to be on the losing side.
Oh,
he was. In fact, there was a lots of Newcastle players that were outrageously good tonight. Yeah. But the truth is, Liverpool go home with the 3 points. It's not their fault. Anthony Gordon made a ridiculous decision.
Oh, what's he doing?
Ridiculous decision.
What is he doing?
And that's pretty much where the game, what swung the game. Because Newcastle, first 25, 30 minutes, mate, wow. They were blistering. Yeah. Blistering all over the pitch. Then they had to have a little rest. And when they had their little rest, Liverpool's first attack, it's a brilliant strike from Gravenberch. But even at that point, Jay, still felt that Newcastle were going to get something out of the game or get themselves back into it. And then rush of blood from Gordon. That is the reason they got beat tonight.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
A ridiculous tackle from him. He's run 30 yards sprinting and he's gone over the top of... It's a stupid tackle. I don't know what he's thinking. It's so
nonsense. You haven't got a clue.
And you know what winds me up? Is when they start clapping him off the pitch. It's just cost you the game. You're getting clapped off the pitch, half hour in, 40 minutes, been battering Liverpool. And they ain't got a striker as it is.
He's right
sent off. What is he doing? It's so annoying. But you know what? Fair play. They're resilient. 2-0 down after a minute in the second half. And they come back and get something from it. They were absolutely fantastic, Newcastle, tonight. They should be proud of themselves. Mm-hmm. They were brilliant. All right, they've got done, sucker punch it in. That's how cruel football is. But that is a brilliant goal, the last goal. Listen, it was fair play to the young kid who's come on and scored. But I tell you what, Liverpool, they look shaky at back.
They were terrible, mate. They were How can Newcastle... Look, we know how good they can be, Newcastle. They bopped Liverpool off the park second half. Bopped them off the park. Yet, I'm going to go back to that red card. That is the reason they lost. And Gordon's going to have to sit and live with this because he's going to miss 3 games now, right? There's injuries that are coming in as well. You know, this could be a costly game for Newcastle. They can leave with their heads held high. Glorious failure, I'm afraid. And Liverpool managed to find a way. And that's what you sometimes talk about, champions finding a way. Tonight, somehow, that second half, Liverpool were... most of the game, Newcastle were the better side. Most of the game.
90% of it. Let's go to Andy. He's a Newcastle fan. Hi, Andy.
Right, Andy.
You're all right, Jason. You're all right.
All right, matey.
Love the clown the clown thing for you, Cundy.
Go on, matey.
Do you know what? I'm really disappointed with the result. But we played really well. Even being 10 men down, 1 man down.
Yep.
Hurtful. I get why he was sent off, but we were amazing tonight. And we were amazing.
No, but he's cost you. He's let everyone down. He should apologise, and he will apologise privately. He might even publicly as well, but it's just a stupid, ridiculous decision. And ultimately, it's cost you at least a point, possibly 3. If he's on the pitch for the whole game, you can make a very good case to say you might go on and get more than just a point out that game. But you can't, you know.
So transfer-wise, what would you say we need to do? Does it come from me to you? Because, like, we don't know where we need to go.
We need a striker.
We
need a striker.
Yes, I know.
There's no beating around the bush here. Like, Anthony Gordon's 3 games. He's not a striker. I thought he'd done really well for half hour before he got sent off.
O'Hara, we need someone else. So, like...
We need backup on the bench, mate, I'll be honest. I thought, you know, but look, the lads come on, done well. I can't fault Newcastle tonight. I actually can't fault you. I thought he was fantastic.
I think we were meant to nice.
I know, but you got beat, and that ultimately...
we got beat, but we were 2-0 down with 10 men.
No, but that's the reason, you know, when you fought back 2-2 with 10 men, can you imagine those extra legs? I mean, the goal itself, the winning goal, it's a beautifully crafted goal by Liverpool. It really is a beautifully crafted goal.
It's a great goal. Yes. Why does he spare it the back post?
Because they got down 10 men.
Get back to 2-2's job done, isn't it? You get something from the game.
Oh, sorry, bud.
We dominated them all day long. We did.
Yeah. Andy, listen, I'm gonna go to another Andy. He's a Liverpool fan. All right, Andy.
All right, Andy.
Hello, boys. Do you know what? When you went through the other Andy, I genuinely started talking. I was just about to say I'm not a Newcastle fan, but
you're not the only Andy.
Probably the bottle of wine talking, to be honest. But firstly, Newcastle absolutely blew us out of the water. We were atrocious. Yeah. But when you've got half a new team, I don't know what you expect, to be honest, but we were just all over the place. Newcastle were brilliant. And like you said, Anthony Gordon's decision was just...
what's he doing?
Yeah, he killed the game for them, to be honest. But I will say this: if we play like we have done for the last 2 games, in fact for the last 10 games, including last season, we play like that, we are nowhere near winning the title. Not a chance. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Ekitike, what a sign!
Yeah, he looks
good.
He looks so sharp.
He's what you hope Darwin Núñez would be. That's how he looks to me.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love Núñez. I love his energy, his passion, and things like that. And this game was calling out for that sort of that energy, because I just think we just look like a team of technical players who, you know, didn't know how to deal with the emotion. You know, players like Jordan Henderson, Jamie Carragher, Steven Gerrard, those sorts of players would have known how to deal with that.
You got overrun all over the park.
Yeah.
You were second best, to everything. I couldn't believe what I was watching. For 20, 30 minutes in the second half, it looked like you had 9 men.
Yeah. Actually, Jamie, absolutely. Szoboszlai was our best player.
Yeah,
and he was a midfielder.
Him and Van Dijk played well, I think.
Really well. They dealt with some, you know, Elanga played brilliantly, and I thought Harvey Barnes, you know, created some decent chances, but our midfield just looked atrocious. I mean, I quite like Wirtz when he's on the ball, when we're in possession, he looks quite a talented player, but off the ball, I don't know where our sort of rugged player comes from, because we haven't got any players who who know how to sort of battle like Newcastle's midfield did.
Yeah,
Bruno Ramirez, he just knew how to just get everything moving with that. Yeah, mate, he was
heroic.
awesome.
It was a heroic performance. It was like he was playing his last game for Newcastle ever. The way he
really
ran around
was.
the pitch, it was unbelievable stuff.
The one thing I just want to finish off with, boys, just like the thing that I think really stands out is Arne Slot's decisions for substitutions. We went 2-0 up. He made some changes, and every time he's taken Ekitike off, even in pre-season games, we've really gone downhill. And I don't know if that's the depth of our team or if that's the decisions of the adjustments he's making or what. But every time he makes these decisions around 70 minutes, we look really vulnerable.
So what you're saying, you need Isak? Is that what you're saying?
Whether it's Isak or whether it's a striker who...
Do you need Isak? Here's a question for you.
You don't have to sell this to me!
You need Isak. Like, seriously, because I feel like you're going to... If you're going to sign him, it's going to cost you 130, maybe 100, whatever. Like, whatever it's going to be. I don't even think you're going to get him. But... Mate, 130 million, you can sign 2 top-class players.
Yeah.
In different positions. I don't know... Like, I know he's an amazing player, but do you actually... Ekitike looks
for me, just about in there, right, for me, I thought the last 2 games show that Konate and Van Dijk, there is a weakness there. And Konate tonight was that weak link.
I think, do you know what? I think if I was playing FIFA, I'd absolutely go for Isak. But we're not playing FIFA. We're being realistic. And the fact is, do you know what? You're right. I think we need to go for... Yes, we do need another striker. Do we need to go for Isak? You know, if we had all the money in the world, then of course we do. But you're absolutely right, mate. You're absolutely right. Like our defensive position looks atrocious. And mate, we've only got 3 centre halves. Well, we've got 3.5. We've got the new 18-year-old who's coming. But for an 18-year-old to be, the next
16-year-old scored the winner. I mean, that's unbelievable stuff.
Oh, he in pre-season he looks an absolute beast. But again, we're talking about a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
There's so much pressure on a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, think back to what you were doing when you were 16. Like, he's not going to win us a title at the age of 16. But give him 3 years, 4 years, he is going to be an absolute superstar.
It's a brilliant goal.
It's a great goal, by the way. The build-up to it, 5-6.
It's a brilliant finish, a brilliant goal. Yes, it was. Yeah, really
it's an absolutely fantastic goal.
Yeah, but I just think that to answer your question, Jamie, and I'll let you go, is do we need Isak? I would say yes, if we've got enough money to go and get Mark Gahey or another centre half of that top quality. If we've got,
you ain't.
If we've got, yeah. Well, this is the
you ain't got that money.
If we haven't got that money, then absolutely fine. Then I'd say go for another, 60, 70 million pound striker. This is stupid talking about this sort of money, but another 60, 70 million pound striker, and then go and spend the rest of the money, another 50, 60 million, whatever the rest is, and go and get another top quality centre back. Because or you sign Konate with the deal that he wants, plus another centre
Welcome to the Athletic FC pod.
Will be the long-term future.
Andy, you're a star, mate. I appreciate your call. Loads to get through.
The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. So last week's title winners Manchester City are now sensationally out of the race after a comprehensive 2-0 defeat at home to Spurs, who were good all over the pitch for almost all of the game. Weird. Meanwhile, the biggest crisis klaxon looms over Graham Potter, hammered 5-1 at home by Chelsea. West Ham fans streaming out well before the final whistle. The Premier League is back. Although Nuno seems the most likely to be in voice note territory, how on earth could Forest let go their best manager, maybe since Brian Clough? 2 words that rhyme with Evangelos Varoufakis, perhaps. Arsenal hammer leads, some big positives, including bringing on someone born in 2009, but injuries to Saka and Odegaard. Barry relegated Everton, christened their new stadium with a win. Brentford and Bournemouth get their first wins of the season, while Villa, Manchester United, Fulham, Brighton and Wolves all remain winless. We'll do all that, which is quite a lot. Answer your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Nader Manuha, hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello, Dan Bardell.
Hello, Max.
And welcome, Sam Dalling.
Hello, Max.
Rob writes, Dear Football Weekly, as has been mentioned by several pod contributors and Barry over recent months, Thomas Frank famously starts slowly in his new job. Is Max excited for when he really gets going at Spurs? Let's start at the Etihad then. because we gave the title to City last week. And now they don't have it anymore after being comprehensively... Would you say, Nedum, comprehensively beaten by Tottenham?
Ooh, good question. Asking the former Man City player and fan if they were comprehensively beaten. It's a strong way to start.
You've got to be honest with the listeners and with yourself.
Yeah, this is where I'm allegedly paid to be impartial, isn't it? I was very, very impressed by Spurs. And to be honest, before going into the game, I thought if Spurs didn't have Kulusevski playing, City might be all right. You know, that's what I thought, because Kulusevski is the one that enjoys playing against City more than any other player, I think, through history. But then Spurs started and they played really well. I think the way that they were very much on the front foot for the vast majority of the game, and obviously there were times when they had to withhold a bit of pressure from City and so on, and some opportunities which City had, but it's impressive that they can go there, play in that manner and look so good and feel so comfortable in doing it. So I wouldn't necessarily say comprehensively outplayed as such, but as they walk off the pitch, they know that they deserve that result based on the moments that they had and the ones that limited City from getting. I think City would be disappointed to have not scored. But yeah, it's another beautiful day at the Etihad for Spurs. You know, it seems to be an annual thing at the moment. Taking back to the old days when we used to get slapped around by City, but those days are gone now. I think that's 6 goals in a row now, is it? Without City scoring against them in the last 2 games at the Etihad.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the thing. Yeah, well, no, that was 4-0 last year, but you know, Spurs can beat City and be good and have bad seasons. Or every Tottenham fan is thinking that.
It's a tough read, and I'll be honest with you, this time of the season I find the hardest to sort of be in media, because there's the emotional side, then there's the logical side, and I try so hard to not overreact. I try so hard, but sometimes you got to do it both ways. But I was impressed with Spurs, and given the fact of how they played last week at home to Burnley, so there's that's the range, isn't it? How do you perform against teams who you expect to be near the bottom? How do you perform against teams who are going to work near the top? And that's 2 pretty consistent showings so far. And what I like as well from Thomas Frank's perspective is that he made changes for both games to suit the needs of the match itself. So yeah, they look, the Spurs are all right, you know. I thought after the Super Cup, all that talk of, in fact, speaking with Kate Mason, legend that is Kate Mason, we were talking about the legend of being Spursy and how it disappeared, but we noticed it disappeared over time, not in the space of games, because they went from winning the Europa League to then losing the Super Cup. And there was no game in between, really, that took away that Spursy title. But I think Thomas Frank's Spurs might be different in the league, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and the midfield, Sam, was really good. You know, Bentancur, Palhinha, and Pape Sarr were brilliant in this game. Yeah,
they were, and I think, that is critical. It's what they missed a lot last year as well. I know we talked about the flying fullbacks and Ange's style and Ange ball, so we don't need to go back over that, but they missed that solidity in midfield, and Bentancur sort of fell away from being the player he was that everyone expected him to be a couple of years ago. So it was just a brilliant performance. Like, that is, to misquote Thomas Frank, that is an operation that does go well. The patient did not die up at the Etihad. I mean, you could say, well, they won their 4-0 last year under Ange, so in theory it's not as good. But it was a superb display, and just so impressed. And I hope, well, we'll see, isn't it? It's so early to know whether that will continue. I remember a couple of years ago under Ange, they were top and everyone was talking them title contenders. But I like Frank. He's coming out with some good lines, talking about falling in love with the club, and wants players who want to play for the club as well, which I think is a really good thing in a manager. But a good result for Spurs.
And actually, you know, so much talked about last week about not getting Eze down. And the only player, well, they're buying 2 players, right, that are making Palhinha and Kudus. And Kudus is running with the ball. And actually his defensive work, just all round, he's playing like the Kudus that we saw, I think, 2 years ago at West Ham. And it makes such a difference.
Yeah, I think Nedum's right to call out the fact that, you know, there's no Kulusevski, there's no Maddison, so everyone's asking, well, where's Spurs' creativity going to come from? Actually, they didn't win that game with creativity. That they won that game with energy and pressing. And in the first few games I've seen Spurs, Kudus has been a massive part of that. He's a fun player to watch on the ball, but like you say, he's worked very, very hard as well. And Spurs did a great job. 2 clean sheets as well, but it's not just stemming from the defence, it's stemming from the whole team and the way Thomas Frank has set them up across the 2 games as well. I wondered how would we judge where Spurs are after they beat Burnley as well, but you know, to beat Man City, beat Burnley, I've got concerns about Manchester City still. I don't think beating Wolves last week was the true barometer of perhaps where City are at, because I think Wolves are going to be pathetic by and large this season. But I've got to say, Spurs have been really, really impressive. Thomas Frank is such a good manager, such a likeable manager, and it's a great start to the season for them.
City were great against Wolves, Nedum. And, you know, Tijani Reinders was Player of the Year after that game. It's now a total fraud after this one. Haaland missed chances. Trafford is really interesting, actually. Tombo says, I'd appreciate a defender's view from Nedum on Spurs' second goal, more on the setup at the goal kick than the ensuing fiasco. 3 players in your own 6-yard box feels like it's asking for trouble. And Trafford actually got more and more nervous as the game went on, I thought.
Yeah. And this is a really, really interesting point, because I think you can almost split yourself into 2 camps here. There's the camp at which features a lot of older players saying, why are you playing the ball short in general? But then there's the camp that sort of push back a little bit, because it's the intent versus the execution. And I think there's a really good camera shot from behind Trafford's goal when he tries to play the ball to Nico, and fundamentally plays it to the wrong side. Like, if he plays it to Nico Gonzalez's left foot, then it changes the dynamic of the press from perhaps Sarr, because Sarr ends up being the one who almost has the ball played to him. But what I would say, for James Trafford, and to be fair, lots of other people now, you get a chance to appreciate how good Ederson is, because some of the time when there be that many players in and around that space, this is when you see Ederson play a longer ball that almost sets him on through on the other side for the City forwards. And I think Trafford will probably get that in time, but I think playing for the likes of Man City and so on, you're not really afforded time based on the mistakes that you make, because every point in itself is so crucial. So I think for Trafford, he's tried to do the right thing. And I thought, in fairness, in the first game against Wolves, I thought he did do well. But as Dan's saying, maybe Wolves are going to be in the pits of hell this year, who knows? But yeah, I think it's an execution standpoint. And I think seeing someone like Ederson, Ortega's, those who've done it before, for everything, whether someone thinks about what they can save or the general passing, they don't really give tons of opportunities like that up when they're playing in their normal flow. And I don't think they get worse in games either. And some of that will probably come with experience, because for James, this is the biggest platform that he's probably seen so far.
The interesting thing, Sam, is, by all accounts, City have agreed personal terms with Donnarumma. You can agree personal terms and not get the player. We've established that. But that is interesting, because he's sort of known as this unbelievable shot stopper, but not great with his feet.
Yeah, and I wondered the unsettling effect that might have on James Trafford, because by all accounts, he was basically set to go to Newcastle. People around him were saying that's where he's going, and they had a bid accepted, and Manchester City basically had this right to match, and they came in and took him back. And he'd said he's not short of confidence, James Trafford. He straddles that line between confidence and arrogance really well. He is loved. I spent some time talking to people around him. He's not the biggest for a goalkeeper, but he always wants to play, right? At 16, he texted the manager of Curzon Ashton when he was on the City's academy and said, can I come and play for you? And the Curzon Ashton manager went, yeah, I'll ring you back shortly. Never rang him back, so they've missed out on that. And he's only 22. Jordan Pickford didn't play his first Premier League season until he's 22. And he's come back from adversity a lot, James Trafford. He was dropped by Accrington Stanley when he was out on loan after a few mistakes, so spent time on the bench there. Bolton fans didn't want him. They were like, why are we getting an Accrington reject in? And actually he ended up falling in love with the club. They fell in love with him. He still goes to watch them. 2 days after he won that 21 Euros, he was back watching Bolton in the pre-season friendly in the away end. And people talk about England, the 21s, right? He kept all those clean sheets. He actually only played 1 game in the qualifiers building up to that. He was never the first choice. He's always been a late developer physically. So I just think at 22, he's gone in as City's number 1. It's big pressure, but he has played a lot of football. Even at Burnley, he got dropped, right? And he got dropped. And then the day after, he had to walk into the England training ground and face everyone because it was international camp, having just been dropped. So they talk about character and resilience. It'll take him a bit of time. But this Donnarumma thing, hang on, you told me I was going to be number 1. And if Donnarumma comes in, I am not going to be number 1. Why am I here? Because he's at a stage of his career where he wants to be number 1. So it's a funny one with Trafford. I hope he does well. He needs time. As Nedum says, you don't always get that as a goalkeeper at somewhere like Man City. Yeah,
but fun if he's number 1 and Donnarumma is just doing the warm-up for him, before the game.
One other thing, specifically on his footwork, right? He goes back in the summers and works with this non-league keeper at work. He was at Workington Reds called Jim Atkinson. He just loves this guy's footwork, his distribution. So he knows it's something he's got to work on. And he's humble enough to spend his summers going off back and doing that. And I think that speaks a lot about him.
There is nothing you don't know about James Trafford, Sam. Who knew? What a booking. What a great booking for us today. Look, well done to Tottenham. And Brennan Johnson as well, who scores lots of goals, and no one ever talks about him. Scored another, didn't he? Let's go to the London Stadium. West Ham 1, Chelsea 5. The constants in life, Dan. West Ham fans streaming out of the stadium before the final whistle. I think some before the half-time whistle.
I think they're probably just going to the bar at half-time. I think if they'd been 5-1 down at half-time, perhaps you could say that they were leaving. But at 3-1, I think most of them were probably just going to the bar to have a pint and drown their sorrows, I would say. But it doesn't take away from the fact that West Ham are in a sorry state. I called them to go down before a ball was kicked, and obviously it's what I've seen in the first 2 games, conceding eight goals. They're in big trouble. I mean, as a goalkeeper coming and letting 8 goals in his first 2 games before Hermansen's come in, and it's just been a horrible time for him. And they're just, I think, a mishmash of players, West Ham. And what's happened in the summer is they've still got that mishmash of players, but they've lost their experienced players who weren't necessarily going to play, but were a big part of the dressing room. And when the chips are down, you know, who are those players now looking at? Bowen's a fantastic player. He's their captain, but I wouldn't say he's a natural leader. So they've lost a lot of experience from that squad. They've got players from kind of 3-4 managerial regimes now. I'm not convinced any of them are the right type of player for Graham Potter. I think they wasted their summer window 12 months ago and didn't really bring in any players that seriously improved the squad. And I think he's already treading on a tightrope, Graham Potter. I think West Ham could go down with 3 managers this season. That's one of my early season predictions. I think they're in huge trouble. You look at the fact the newly promoted teams have all already won games as well. That didn't happen for a long time into the last season. They're just hopeless, and it's not a happy place, West Ham, at all. I feel sorry for West Ham fans.
Yeah. So who are your 3?
Yeah, I was going to say who are your 3.
Who are your 3? Dyche is one of them. And then what? Avram Grant? Who's it?
Might throw Nuno in there at some point.
It's a good point
you
you make that I think West Ham fans are desperate to Forest to sack Nuno, because then Nuno could go in and fix West Ham while Forest, and we'll get to them, we'll do something insane with Ange or Jose.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Dan, who are your 3 to go down then?
I had West Ham, Burnley and Leeds at the start of the season. I thought Sunderland would stay up. And then obviously the first week I'm thinking I'm really clever when they win 3-0, and then not so clever this week.
And in regards to those teams there, and you mentioned Wolves as well, where do you see Wolves finishing this year? Do you think they've gone backwards as such?
Yeah, well, every year you end up selling your best players and you're kind of circling the drain. At some point your luck will run out. Now I look at that Wolves lineup that played at the weekend, and very little quality in there, very little experience as well. I don't know how you've ended up with so little quality and so little kind of bona fide Premier League experience as well. And the manager's well liked there because he goes to the pub after the games and things like that when they win. I don't think you're going to see him in the pub too many times this season.
West Ham fans will be delighted that we haven't talked about West Ham during this. What's interesting, Nadim, is they talk about, this midfielder's got no legs, which seems a bit harsh. But you look at Ward-Prowse and Souček and you go, you're often coming up against a 3. And because of the way they play 3 at the back, okay, it's not just you have 2 people and no one else is allowed in that area. But that just doesn't... You need legs around Ward-Prowse so he can have the ball and have time on the ball, right?
Could you explain that to me further? Could you develop that point? You need legs around him so that he can have more time on the ball. How does that work?
What I mean is, so I suppose that at the most simple level, neither of those players can run in a way that we talked about Pape Sarr, can really press, right? So that means you don't get time on the ball if you're a centre midfielder with quality. You don't agree?
No, it's not necessarily that. I just think it just depends how you want to perceive it. So someone could say that they don't have legs in midfield as such, but I'd imagine with those 2, if we looked at their running data, they actually do cover a lot of ground.
Sure,
I think some of it's probably coming in terms of, say, the ability to run at high speed, but someone like Pape Sarr is more of like an exception with that as opposed to the norm. So yeah, it does feel funny for them in that midfield area, but I think Graham Potter and the rest of the team would know that those are the strengths and weaknesses of those players and have a style which basically would suit them. And I don't necessarily think that they're always...
They don't seem to have it at the moment, do they?
Yeah,
they don't have a style that suits them at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's a bit awkward with Graham Potter just because, I personally, I've hold my hands up. I think I like him, but I feel like being in at West Ham is a tough job for who he is and how he carries himself, because I don't think he necessarily fits in with how most of those fans like perceive their club and their football. And as in the same way, for example, when he went to Chelsea, a lot of people were doubting him. Like he's gone to West Ham, a lot of people are doubting him for like equal opposite reasons because of the sort of feel that he has within the club itself and its identity. But yeah, those midfielders, I wouldn't say that they don't have legs because there will be other games when they could be, say, applying more pressure and so on. And I just think West Ham are really poor at the moment. That's it. We'll admit they're really, really poor. But for example, would you say that, say, Will Hughes, has Will Hughes got way more legs than, say, like Souček or Ward-Prowse or someone? Would you say that, yes or no?
I just haven't. It's a good question because I don't know if I've studied, but I feel like Will Hughes.
But why?
I love Will Hughes. I don't know.
Will Hughes, I mentioned Will Hughes not to like call him out to shame. I think Will Hughes is brilliant. I remember playing against him like 10 plus years ago. I thought he was brilliant then. I think he's brilliant now. But he himself and like Wharton in that midfield have got so much ground to cover. And it's not to say that they cover every single blade of grass, and they don't. Will Hughes isn't the same as Pape Sarr, but he still works really well within that space for Crystal Palace as an important cog in terms of how they play. I think the fact that they can't really link the back line, the midfield and the forward line and have something that looks cohesive and really hard to play against is probably a bigger concern because the better teams that we've seen so far this season, it all feels like one. We were talking about Spurs and how they looked like the 2 clean sheets have come because they're pressing well from the front, supporting from midfield. There's matching aggression at the back. I think that's the same for some of these other sides, like the way Chelsea took them apart. Obviously, barring Hermansen having 1 or 2 issues for the last week or so, is the whole heart, it's the whole approach, everyone's together and so on. Whereas for West Ham, it just doesn't feel like that's the case. I wouldn't necessarily go to legs first because one thing I'll say as well, as a player, it's very awkward when people say you got no legs.
No,
very
of course.
Awkward, my friend. Especially when it's you, Max. When it's you, Max, that's what makes it worse.
And actually, there's an interesting point about how you analyse the game, because sometimes you try and look at the big picture and sometimes you pick out a part of the pitch, but obviously everything is connected, right? And
Correct.
If Kudus is still there, then you've got somebody who is doing so much pressing that it doesn't really matter if you, inverted commas, don't have legs. Sorry, Sam.
I think it's that they're very different kind of players and what their role is. Like Will Hughes is an orchestrator. I love watching him play, and I love the fact he's now a regular Premier League footballer. Souček feels like he's in that role where he actually isn't there to link the play, and that's a problem when you've got to. He's basically making a career, and I know this is oversimplifying it, of arriving and being that goal-scoring midfielder. Kevin Nolan, the type who will get you 10, 12 goals from midfield. So it's a very different role, and when you've got a man in midfield who's doing that, and you're not carrying him, but that's where I think you need another one in there to link that play, because he's not designed to do that.
Chelsea were good. It's worth saying, Dan.
Yeah. João Pedro's so good as well, involved in pretty much every goal on Friday night. But yeah, I'm watching him, and he feels like he's an old player for them because of the Club World Cup. It feels like he's been there forever, but it's kind of second Premier League game. And I just think Chelsea look good without Palmer as well, which is a really, really big thing. Esteval looks like a breath of fresh air. I think he's going to be a very, very good player. 1-0 down, could have gone into themselves, didn't, got themselves back in the game and ended up absolutely thumping West Ham. I think they've got a nice variety in their front players, the players that they can bring in now after 3-4 years of Todd Bowley and bringing in every attacking player in existence. Kind of finally, it feels like that attack is kind of well balanced. So no doubt they'll go on and sign 2 or 3 players to add to that this week and make it unbalanced again. Chelsea are really, really good. I think Maresca's done a really good job there.
It was interesting. Cole Palmer looked very sad in an unseasonably warm puffer jacket, didn't he? And I was watching it with the volume down while I was watching the Australian spin-off of Death in Paradise on the big TV with Mrs. Rushton. And I was like, God, Maresca's kept cutting to Cole Palmer. And I was like, they've dropped Cole Palmer. They didn't win last week. This is a mad decision. But it turns out that he got injured in the warm-up. Yes, Sam, you wanted to say something about Pedro as well, Sam.
Well, I mean, I just love him, and it feels like this is now his stage to really become a world-class footballer. It feels like, as Dan said, he's been around ages, and my wife is a Watford season ticket holder, and so I watched him a fair bit when he first came over. And actually, when she was then my girlfriend, he saved her birthday once because we had a very late night in Leeds. We went to Huddersfield. It was freezing cold. We were not in a good way, and the day didn't really start until he scored the first of 2. But he has this ability to conjure stuff from nowhere, and I think that is, he can get on the end of things as he did with that header, but also he's one of those players with the ball at his feet who can just make something happen. And he's got this tattoo on his arm that's, I think it says predestinado, like predestined, and it's like some players like Estavio comes in at 18 straight to stardom. He has played a lot of football. His dad was a professional footballer who was then in prison for murder over in Brazil, and so he had a tough upbringing with his mum. Fluminense spotted him and brought him across to their academy, and he wasn't always the star. It was all that same old story of like physical development, and like the club had to help his mum out with money and things like that. And they came over, and not really speaking any English, and then it was lockdown at Watford, and his stepfather, who we'd been very close to, and had come over and lived with him and his mum. He died really suddenly. I think he had like acute pancreatitis, so like died 3 days after falling ill. And 2 days after the funeral, we scored his first Premier League goal, and I think he played at the Emirates 5 days after his stepdad died, and they were really close. So like he's a really strong, resilient character. It feels like he's moved up through the steps. He's done Watford, plenty of games there, Brighton, and now he is at this stage where like I really do think he can be one of the best players in the Premier League. Like it's a wonderful story. If you look at that story from a like journalist narrative type of view,
Sure.
it's that story, that rising. I just love him. I think he's brilliant.
All right. That'll do for part one. Part two will begin with what on earth is happening at Nottingham Forest. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. 11th of September, a few tickets left for the Troxy in London. Let's fill it. 2,500 people or something. Come on, that's the average attendance of, I don't know, Barrow. Surely we're better than that. Me, Barry, Wilson, Nicky Bandini, Johnny Liu. Cameos to come. Tickets can be purchased by heading to theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. It'll be live streamed across the world, so any of you listening to this have literally no excuse. Let's go to Selhurst Park, Palace 1, Forest 1. David says, has Nuno gone back to his dying Jedi persona? Has he felt a great disturbance in the force, as if a million voices cried out in terror and were then suddenly silenced? It would explain Morgan Gibbs-White signing that new deal. Maybe Darth Marinakis found his lack of faith disturbing. We'll get to the game, which wasn't bad, but the Nuno story is extraordinary. On Friday, it was being reported he might be sacked before the game. He was incredibly open in his press conference. You've probably heard it, where he said, I used to have a great relationship with the owner and now I don't, basically. And he said, there's no smoke without fire. There's also apparently a rift between him and Edu, the new head of recruitment that came in from Arsenal. But, Nadim, if you're a Forest fan, you are thinking, why would we possibly mess this up? It's going so well. What are we doing?
Valid point. When they were going to the game yesterday, I think I was on radio and there were a few fans that were speaking, and they were actually defending both parties. They said, we love Nuno. But the owners helped us out so much, and this, that, and the other, and they didn't really want to fully attach themselves to something too aggressively at this moment in time. Because in theory, the owner has helped them be in a position which they probably never thought they'd be in, but then so's Nuno as well. So it's weird that you're having this level of car crash in the same week where you signed Hutchinson, you signed McAtee and another player. You know you're going to be in the Europa League and things seem to be positive. And especially going into the big game that we never thought we'd see between Forest and Palace, the two European rivals, or at least from a litigation standpoint anyway. It's disappointing. I think most fans, I'd probably say every fan, probably like it when there's good things being reported about their football club and the football is the main point and that can be spoken about. But whenever it's all this stuff behind the scenes and they've got no real say in it, you almost feel a bit embarrassed by it. And in some ways, I think this does feel a bit embarrassing. And as I look at it from Nuno's standpoint, you wonder, why is he saying the things that he's saying? Why is this? What is his own end goal as such?
Yeah.
Because if there's no relationship there, and airing out your grievances in public isn't necessarily going to make it any easier, especially against an owner who's not shy of speaking up himself and making his own decisions. So yeah, it must be tough to be a Forest fan right now because you can't just talk about the football and look forward to this season ahead, but you hope that somehow it's sorted, but I just don't see it. With a new director of football and Edu coming in, maybe he would never have picked Nuno in a million years if he could start over, and I guess that's going to be the narrative that rumbles on until one of those decides to make the decision.
Sure, and I mean the thing is, Dan, if Nuno's not going to go to press conference and say that if he thinks he's staying, right? There's just no way. I mean, it's odd that you would say it anyway, because if you're going to go, you're going to go, and someone will pick him up because he's such a good manager, right? He's proved it at Wolves, he's proved it at Forest. But I mean, maybe there is. The only thing you can think, I guess, is does he think if he publicly stands up to Marinakis, a bit like Trump likes a strong guy, maybe Marinakis likes a strong guy too. I don't know.
Yeah, and the other thing I can think of is that he would expect the fans to come out and be up in arms about it and side with him. And like Nedum says, maybe that's not what's happened because they do love the owner as well. I kind of feel like the writing was on the wall a little bit at the back end of last season. I can't remember the game, but when Marinakis stormed on the pitch and kind of had that to do with Nuno, I did think this isn't going to last. And they looked like they were certs for the Champions League. And I think the owner would have thought, we're going to get into the Champions League here. And then they didn't, and they dropped down to the Conference League, and now they're back in the Europa League. But I do always think now that now Forest have reached a level with all that's going on around the club now and the changes in the hierarchy and behind the scenes, standards are going to be elevated. They're going to be very, very high. And whether that be results on the pitch or the way Nuno handles themselves, it doesn't feel too far away for me from a parting of ways. And I don't know whether there's some agent stuff going on here as well, because Edu likes to work with Keir Drapchin, who just brought Douglas Luiz to the club. Nuno's got a different agent who I think's been heavily involved in the transfer policy up until now. So it's almost like the two worlds are colliding. And at the end of the day, Marinakis is the owner. Nuno's not going to come out the right side of this. So to hear him speaking the way he's speaking, I found a little bit confusing.
Rumours of Ange, Jose, Brendan Rodgers. I mean, Jose and Marinakis sounds fun, doesn't it, Sam? But if you've come from Nuno ball to Ange ball, that would also be odd. But I mean, I'm all for Postecoglou back in the Premier League as soon as possible.
Yeah, so am I. But I don't think you are if you're a Nottingham Forest fan. That would be a terrible move, right? Because they would go from being this side. They were so solid last year, right? They didn't mind not having the ball. I had a look. They only had 50% or more possession in 7 Premier League games last year, which for a team that was in the Champions League spots for that long is not what you'd expect. And the most they had was 55. Right? They like to play solid defence. They've got Matt Sells in, and they hit teams on the break with pace, and they use Chris Wood. So it's not a squad that's moulded in the Ange mode. So I would be a little bit worried. I mean, it's just all strange, isn't it? I mean, how can Nuno come out and say it's absurd that people are suggesting that I'm going to lose my job? It's like, well, it's not really absurd, mate, because you came out in a press conference and said something you didn't really need to say whatsoever. And the jump is, I mean, football journalists do tend to make some quite big jumps in terms of what people say and what the headline is, but it was a relatively small, little stream that most have jumped over to reach this discussion. So yeah, it's odd, but not Ange, Mourinho and Marinakis. I mean, wow, that could properly. It'd be fun. It'd be fun for the neutral, not for Nottingham Forest, who have had such a good couple of years and are on this upward trajectory. Just to then chuck a couple of fireworks in and explode it. Nah, not for them.
Yeah, speaking of chucking fireworks in, Philippe Auclair says, that banner, please discuss. No, Philippe, we're not going to discuss it, but we're going to tell you what it said. The Palace fans unveiled it wasn't quite a tifo, it was just a big banner with a picture of Marinakis with a gun to the head of Morgan Gibbs-White. And Gibbs-White is quoted saying, Mr. Marinakis is not, in red pen, involved in blackmail, match fixing, drug trafficking or corruption. The Football Association is investigating the banner. Marinakis has consistently denied any wrongdoing in relation to all such allegations. I mean, the game itself, Nathan, Palace better first half, Forest better second. Highlight of the game, that pass from Dan N'Doye to Hudson-Odoi was so good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great pass. I think you summed up the game pretty well there. But yeah, to give credit to that ball. As a defender, sometimes you get caught in this sense of everything's all right, there's nothing to worry about. And then every so often, because it is the Premier League, because these are some of the best, in and around Europe and the world, they can just find that little moment, see a pass that maybe no one else can see. And then good luck to you trying to catch Hudson-Odoi when he's running through like that. So yeah, it's a beautiful moment for them. It's a fantastic bit of football. And obviously there's so much more surrounding the game itself, but I like the fact that there was some quality in there to discuss as well. So yeah, it's a great ball, it's a great goal. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just glad that I don't have to worry about things like that anymore on the pitch in front of tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, Forest almost won it. Igor Jesus hitting the post in injury time. Amari Hutchinson had a chance even later than that. Palace did beat Fredrikstad 1-0 in the Europa Conference League playoff first leg on Thursday night. To the Emirates, Arsenal 5, Leeds 0. Dan, lots of positives for Arsenal, some negatives. Should we start with the good stuff? Victor Gyökeres with his first goals for the club. And the way he took his first as well would be, I was going to say, music to the ears. Well, I guess it is for the Arsenal fans. Because, it was just like he did it all by himself.
Yeah, lovely goal. I did think the dialogue around him was a bit OTT after the first game. He played one game. Just because he didn't score in his first game, it was like an absolute disaster. I liked his penalty as well, the way he kind of brushed himself off and took the penalty. It was a great penalty. I thought it was a great day for Arsenal. First home game of the season. Just these set pieces. I know, we talk about it every time, and it's a bit boring now, probably to an extent. But it's almost like a get out of jail free card, and it must be such a sapper energy sapper for the opposition. That you're in the game, you're doing okay. Manchester United last week, they started that game well. They're doing well, and then Arsenal get a corner and they just score off it. It must be so demoralising as an opposition defender. And once they go ahead, they're going to go on and win that game. And I just thought it was telling that Ødegaard and Saka have gone off injured, and we'd be talking about that like it's an absolute disaster. And obviously they are Arsenal's two best players. But just look at the squad now. They've got so many different options. If those two players weren't to play next week, I still think Arsenal would be okay now. So I think they've recruited really well in the summer. I think the new sporting director's come in and really made a statement, got business done. Arsenal look well set to me. And, once they went 1-0, the result was only going to ever go one way, and it was that Arsenal were going to score a lot of goals and win that game comfortably.
Yeah, although they do play Liverpool next week. So maybe... I still
think they'd be okay. Yeah,
that's so interesting, isn't it? Well, we'll get to Ødegaard and Saka. You mentioned the set pieces. Declan Rice's delivery is so good, Nathan. And, I mean, it's like a free kick, isn't it? Should there be more players who are as good at that, given they just train all week kicking a ball? Shouldn't each team have someone who can just whip it under the crossbar 9 times out of 10?
Well, I think if it was that easy, then everyone would be of the same level. Mr. Rushton. I don't think that's the way football works.
No, I think
I think everyone will be scoring penalties all the time, like a Kane or a Tony. It's also not the way it works. Then also everyone within like the NBA would always be making their free throws as well, because you can practice millions of those if you want.
You can.
But I think it's the skill that he has himself, and I think his teammates' appreciation of exactly where it's going to go. And you can put it into a certain area, like if you practice, but it's the speed of it as well. It's the height of it. Like some of the better players, it's not even going that high. Say the higher it goes, the more chance the goalkeeper's got of being able to get to it, or someone being able to address it and so on. But it comes in so flat, relatively speaking, with such speed that realistically, even if an Arsenal player doesn't get their head on it, it's just chaos. Like that's what he serves up so well. Put a ball into the 6-yard box, basically, where there will probably be 5 to 10 bodies. And at which point, as a defender, as an attacker, whoever touches it's probably not going to be fully cleared, and it might just go in anyway, because it's so tough to play against. So, credit to Arsenal. And I'm with Dan as well. Like, it's what Arsenal do. It's not like exciting, but it's really effective, incredibly effective. And every time they get a set piece, you're thinking, well, here it comes. And that must be a great tool to have, and maybe something they'll need to lean on, maybe for a little while at least, if Saka and Ødegaard are going to be out for a little period.
15-year-old Max Dowman came on. It's interesting how excited we are by someone who's essentially a child, just someone so young. The difference between that and an 18-year-old coming on the pitch, like there's the genuine joy when he came on from the Arsenal fans. Born New Year's Eve 2009. Number one was Killing in the Name, Rage Against the Machine. I think it was the X Factor protest song. It's interesting, Sam, that you can't, just if you start the game really young, it doesn't guarantee success. If you look at the top 20, there are some good names in there of the youngest ever. Wayne Rooney, the 20th youngest. Aaron Lennon in there as well. Ranieri. But it's no guarantee of success. But he does look useful, Dowman, doesn't he?
He does. And I was trying to think what I was doing at 15. And I think I got GCSE maths statistics a year early, and I thought I was doing really well. I was winning at life. And then someone comes on in a Premier League game at Arsenal. And look, the beauty of them is I think Dan's absolutely right. The squad, the depth they've got, you run through their attacking options, means it won't be quite like Ranieri, where he might have to play more like out of necessity. I think Arteta can use him carefully and try and keep the hype down. I mean, he had that volley chance, didn't he, that you were thinking, oh, is this his moment? And then the penalty at the end, I suspect there were some Arsenal fans going, oh, go on, give it Max, give it Max. I don't think that was ever going to happen. Like Gyökeres, the penalties will be interesting for Arsenal because Saka takes them normally. He was off the pitch, but I think Gyökeres had scored something like 27 out of 28 in the last 2 seasons. So he is quite a good penalty taker, and even if you take those goals out, the penalty goals out of his record, he's still got 60 odd for Sporting in the last couple of years. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, Arsenal weren't even like that good, and I know that sounds weird because they've won 5-0, but they only had 5 shots on target. Like Arsenal can get much better. They were clinical, and I think they need to, because Arteta's under a little bit of pressure, right? He spent nearly £1 billion now. He's got the players in that he wanted. He's got his centre forward, got his midfielder. I think he almost has to win the league. You look at 5-6 years in, 1 FA Cup. I know we talk about it, but you look at Wenger's last 6 years, he won 3 FA Cups. So I think Arteta, if he doesn't win the league this year, he might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. Just to say that we have checked it out, there is no confirmation that Max Dowman 2009 was named after the then host of Soccer AM during the glory years. We can't be sure.
The glory years.
But that's what most people think. Danny, you were saying you don't think, because I think Ødegaard and Saka being injured, we obviously don't know how long it is. That could be the difference between the title and not the title. Because you imagine Arsenal will be up there, and that could be 5 points or 7 points or whatever.
I think maybe it was clumsy wording. I'm not saying like it wouldn't be bad news for Ødegaard and Saka to be out because they are Arsenal's two most crucial players. What I think I'm trying to say is that I feel like they can cover it off a lot better this season than they would have been able to this season, and just that they've got different weapons now. So before everything kind of went through Saka and Ødegaard, now they've got other players for things to go through. Now they've got a genuine centre forward to occupy defences. So I think just if they were to be missing for a period of time, I think Arsenal are okay. They will still win football matches. They will still score lots of goals from set pieces. They've got a centre forward. I just think they're better set than they would have been 12 months ago.
Yeah, and actually, if Ødegaard is out, not that is a good thing, but if it means Eze can
we haven't even
Liverpool,
mentioned him.
That will be fascinating to see. Let's go to the Hill Dickinson Stadium. First game for Everton there. They beat Brighton 2-0. I mean, the game could have gone either way, I think, Sam. But first of all, you were there. It does look amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a beautiful ground. We took some photos. I was lucky enough to be there, as you say, and we took some photos outside. And then we looked at them, and it's like, those AI-generated images that you get before a new ground is built. Like the actual real photos of it look like that. And everyone was up there really early. The acoustics in it were absolutely exceptional. The noise that home end can make, I don't know what it does. I don't know much about architecture, but they have designed it. Obviously, there were quiet periods, but when that noise got going, I think it will be the loudest ground in the league. I really do. That I never know. The sirens thing I always find a little bit weird, but my word, that was loud. Like the PA system. That's probably the most money they've spent on anything, the PA system. It was absolutely deafening. It was brilliant. Look, it was a privilege to be there. They've got to sort a few things out. We've got lucky enough to get an invite into some hospitality, how the other world lives. And 40 minutes after we ordered, we chased the food a couple of times, and we were told that the food order hadn't actually been through.
Dear.
And then to make up for it, they brought all 3 courses at once. So by the time I got to my sticky toffee pudding, it was both cold and the ice cream melted completely. So there's my first world problems. It was a tough day out for me, and it was a good game. And I think Everton got a little bit lucky, to be honest. I thought Brighton were the better side. I think Everton are going to struggle this year. I think Grealish gives them a puncher's chance. It's just Grealish and Ndiaye, who I think is a bit wasted out on the right. But yeah, any other day, other than the first day on the new ground, I think Brighton win that game quite comfortably.
That's interesting, yeah, because Matoma hit the bar, didn't hit 0-0. Welbeck had a great chance. Van Hecke hit the post, and O'Reilly had a massive chance at 1-0. Pickford says that, but Danny Welbeck penalty after an obscene handball. I mean, I suppose, Ndiaye, Nathan, we've talked about him before, but he's such an exciting player. Scored the last goal at Goodison, the first goal here. Are you a pub quiz question anywhere, Nathan?
Kind of, yeah.
Oh, what is the question?
I think as it stands, well, to be fair, no, I'm not. I nearly was. I take that back. I was nearly the person who, in 2011-12, I would have been the only player to have played for a team that won the Premier League and got relegated in the same season when I went from City to QPR. So I'm quite glad I avoided that one, because that's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Talk about a drop-off.
Who else is there now?
Couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you, from that extent. But yeah, talk about flipping belief in someone's ability. No, you're not going to win the league, but maybe championships for you. But yeah, Ndiaye, I think he's awesome, and I think it is a shame that he won't play on that left-hand side, because I think it really suits him, and the way that he plays and the magic that he has. I was caught in between two places with Everton, because I love the fact that it's a family club, but then I'm also still attached to the Dyche years, where I didn't really enjoy watching them as such. But then I think back to the David Moyes years, and it was people like Stephen Pienaar who'd be playing that left-hand side. It was so good to watch. Pienaar and Baines down that left-hand side. I loved all that. This is when Everton were a lot more progressive, and I think Ndiaye in some ways reminds me more of a Pienaar back in those days, for the way that they would play and put you under so much pressure. So it's a shame that he will be out on that right-hand side, but his impact definitely is there. And those fans, you can see that they love him for the way that he plays through some dark times, in terms of them being respectfully quite boring. He always seems to find that little bit of magic. And if he can form that sort of relationship with Grealish and others in and around there, then yeah, they'll be all right. I don't know if they'll be amazing. I think I'm with you guys as well, that Brighton probably deserve more from that game. But for the history books, we're probably glad that Everton won their first game at home and then they can sort of think positively. Like nothing beats that first memory of a new place being a positive one, with a good result, with new signing making a difference, and the energy being up there.
Producer Joel says, if the first cheers are good, the first boos are going to be good.
Can you imagine?
Around the Hill Dickinson. But I mean, it's interesting, they couldn't you just play Grealish in the 10 and then Die on the left, and that might work. Anyway, that'll do for part 2. Part 3 will begin with Fulham Man United. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. Alex says, did that 1-1 draw prove that United can beat anybody? Do you know what? The penalty, Dan, is interesting, right? Because Bassi is holding Mount, but Shaw is fouling Muniz at the same time, I think. And Lars has made the point, there's a total imbalance in the risk of an attacker committing a foul and a defender. And maybe that has always been the case. But now they can look at them and decide, well, that's a foul and that's a foul, but we'll give that foul. And it's illustrated by the fact that Lenny Euro pushes Bassi for the United goal. But that doesn't matter, because if he gets penalised, well, he gets penalised. So I don't know. I got slightly irked by that whole situation.
I think it's based on where they think the ball is going to go, and they'll focus on the foul that is nearer where the ball is going to go. I'm no expert on these things.
Well, to jump in there, the ball actually went closer to the foul behind Bassi, because if you remember, it ended up being a back post header.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think yesterday, sorry to jump in.
No, please do. I didn't want to handle that question, to be honest.
Listen, I don't want to handle it either. But I think they were saying in the commentary that the Bassi foul happened first.
Right.
So that's what they were focusing on. And I don't know, man. It was weird to even be looking at it thinking, is that a foul? You know what I mean? Because Mount himself even didn't like fully sell it either. It's like something's happened. Mount's in the way of Bassi trying to go and do something else. So I was wondering, like, as a player, obviously you can't necessarily like grab someone, throw them, whatever. But like, what do you do at that point? And say, oh well, unfortunately, I can't get back there because this guy's here.
Because I hate the number of penalties there are. I just wonder if you say, okay, VAR look at it and they go, well, if an attacker is fouling a defender anywhere, that takes priority. So like, if you want a penalty, then none of your attackers can be committing a foul in the box, because that evens it up slightly. Because at the moment, it's like, well, the attacker can do all sorts of pushing and pulling because it doesn't really matter, and the defender has to just, the defender's already got his arms behind his back in case it's a handball. Now you just have to replace it with, you just have to turn into a lemon. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, you're basically just a mannequin from set pieces now. And it's a good point. It's good to see you've got your Defenders Union card with you as well this year. I'm a big fan of that, Max. But again, listening to what they were saying in the commentary about how they're going to be trying to clamp down on that this season, I just think it's disappointing, because as the defender, like, it's a really physical game, and the people you're playing against are also incredibly strong, and they've got a huge desire to try and score in the goal that's probably about 2-3 yards away. So sometimes, like, your body will be put into positions which you're not thinking about consciously, but it's just happening due to like just general jostling within a game. Not least of all because some of the way that you jostle with the player is similar to like when a long ball comes up to the striker. You don't have your hands behind your back. Like, you're both jostling for the ball, but the attacker might be in front of you. The ref won't give a free kick there, but if that same thing happens in the box, then it's a penalty. And I think that's a shame. And just going off pure vibes, because obviously the rules are the rules, and laws are laws, or whatever. The push from Euro felt like more of a foul to me than the penalty they gave against Bassi. Because I was like, well, he's put two hands in his back. Bassi's basically like, if Bassi was small and he's laying on the floor, it's probably a free kick.
Yeah.
Because Bassi's stronger, he's penalised, and it's like, well, unlucky. Just got to be stronger yourself.
Yeah, and actually they say, he's got to be stronger there. It's such a cliche.
I hate that so much.
And it's just like, doesn't matter if you're a big unit. If somebody pushes you in the back, you're still pushed in the back. Like that affects what you do, and it affects where the ball goes. Beyond that, Sam, the penalty was interesting, wasn't it? I think Bruno has criticised Chris Kavanagh, another northern voice. I'm really looking forward to the. I'm going to play all the referees' voices at the end of the season without seeing who they are, and see if anyone can guess who they are, because they've all got exactly the same voice. But like Bruno criticising Chris Kavanagh for sort of getting in his way when he's in his zone. Does he have a point?
Well, and it was like he didn't mind him doing it. It was the lack of an apology from the referee. That's what Bruno seemed to. I'm sure he wouldn't have liked him to enter his zone. But yeah, it was, well, he didn't apologise to me, and that put me off in between starting my run-up and then going back to this stuttering run-up. That feels a little bit like excuses to me. I mean, you probably shouldn't let that. The ref was just doing his job, right? Interesting how Chris Kavanagh, he said Fulham and then just Manchester. It wasn't Manchester United.
Yeah,
just Manchester. Like what we play in Pro Evolution Soccer. We haven't got rights to the actual team names.
Yeah, I think so. It's a bit Larry David from Bruno, wasn't it? The commensurate apology for the what you have done.
Yes.
What did you make of? I thought Man United actually down were quite good in the first half in this game.
Yeah, bit like last week. Lots to like about them. Just not quite all coming together. They couldn't seem to get that goal in the first half. Cunha did everything but score. That touch from the long goal kick was absolutely majestic. I think probably everyone in the world, although everyone hates Manchester United, probably not, but I wanted him to score because it was such a good touch, such a beautiful bit of football. And also he was in my fantasy football team, so I did have that as well. I really wanted him to score. He didn't. I think they're the kind of, you can see what Manchester United are trying to do. I think Mount's really interested me in the first couple of games. His role in the way he's played, he's such a good footballer, such a clever footballer, and seeing him play a couple of games for Manchester United, you feel that if he can stay fit, he'll be a real critical player, and that he'll probably be in the next England squad. Him and Grealish will probably get themselves in the next England squad by virtue of just having a couple of good games, because I think Tuchel will lean on experience. They need midfielder. They need a central midfielder. It's pretty desperate in there, I would say, and a goalkeeper as well. Like that, every corner Fulham had, you felt like Fulham were Arsenal. You felt like something might happen because the keeper was just so weak. Obviously,
did you think Fulham were Arsenal just because all their players used to play for Arsenal? Was that also?
That does help as well, doesn't it? But it's delivering. Was it Lukic who was actually delivering the ball like Declan Rice? He'd obviously been doing some set piece practice.
Not John Lukic.
Not John Lukic.
No.
Have I said his name right? He's Lukic.
No, you're right.
Sasha Lukic.
Right.
Yeah, Sasha Lukic must have been working on the training ground this week, Max, because some of his deliveries were Declan Rice-esque.
Yeah. Burnley 2, Sunderland 0. So it means all three promoted sides have won a game, which I think is good, Nathan. Are we going to have an exciting Premier League season at the bottom, or is it still August? And as Nicky said last week, football lies in August, and the promoted sides will all be the bottom three come November.
So I don't think the three promoted sides will go down this year, but I'm firstly rooting for Sunderland to be the team that stays up. But I don't know. It's so easy to overreact at this point in the season. I think realistically, when you'll see what's what is when these next three international breaks are over, and you're heading in towards a time in November, December time where it's just games. To say that the first win on the board doesn't matter would be a lie, because it does, having been somebody who previously held the record for longest period to start a season without winning.
Another pub quiz.
Thank you to Sheffield United for taking that record away from my QPR team of 2013-14. Thank you very much, guys. Or 2012-13 rather. It does matter just for energy, you know what I mean? And the fact that all three teams have won at home, that brings a sense of belief, and the fan bases will always think that when they're coming to a home game now, that there's a chance that the team's going to win. And I think the longer that goes, you can sense it as a player in the crowd. You know, the way that people start talking about you in the media and stuff changes. So the way that managers get questioned changes, and then you feel like a narrative switch, because now the media's almost feeding stuff into your fan base like, you guys are no good. You've got no chance whatsoever. Why are you even here? And so you make a mistake on a weekend, it's like, this is what such and such was saying about on that show or whatever. But yeah, those wins definitely do matter. But in reality, these teams will be make or break. It's like, can you win consecutive games? Can you go a stretch of time unbeaten? Can you stay intact with everyone else around you? And at the moment, in terms of what the bottom is, United have got 1 point. But do we think that they're worse than Burnley, Leeds and Sunderland? Absolutely not. So yeah, let's not lie to ourselves too much in August, but still celebrate those moments, because they'll probably be few and far between as the season progresses.
Yeah. And actually, first goal is crucial, Brian. But Sunderland had chances in this game. Mayenda had a really good chance in the early, but Burnley scored the goals. And actually, Sam, I loved both goals. The setup from Anthony for Cullen is great. The pass from Cullen to Anthony is great.
Yeah, it is. Cullen has almost taken over from Josh Brownhill, who I think was offered a new contract. He was their player of the year last year, and he didn't take it up. I'm not sure he's found a club yet, but Cullen's a company man. He came over from Anderlecht with him to be their metronome, so it's great to him. It's great to see Jadon Anthony as well. I know he went from Bournemouth to Leeds, and I think his mum passed away midway through the season, so he's dealt with a bit, and to see him score that goal was absolutely wonderful. I do think it is really important. I know it's only the first two games, and I take what Nedum's saying, but I think if Sunderland go and win that game, and then again, I know it's 2 games of the season, but suddenly Burnley are 6 points behind Sunderland already. So yes, there's still 38 games to go, but I think psychologically for Burnley not to be 6 points behind a fellow newly promoted side is really big.
Yeah, I also like the strobing floodlights, and slightly annoyed that they turned them off to carry on the game and didn't just start playing, Set You Free by Entrance or whatever. Brentford beat Villa 1-0. Like, this is a huge win, this, Dan, for Keith Andrews. And I loved what he said afterwards. It was scrappy, it was ugly, and I loved it.
I hated it. So Keith feels the opposite about the game to me. Villa kind of made it easy for Brentford, but Villa looked toothless. We could still be playing now, and Villa wouldn't have scored in that game. Brentford dug in, were resilient, needed a reaction off the back of what happened last week, and they got it. I think it was two kind of stale teams who've obviously lost players in the summer, haven't done loads of transfer business, but I think Brentford, just by having one new addition to their front three, it gave them something. It gave the fans something to get behind, because they had a new player, and I think that's what won them the game ultimately. Villa, I think, could have named most of that starting lineup in 2021 and looked very, very stale, I've got to say. So, well, I think a draw probably would have been a fair result, but so watch Villa kind of outplayed by a midfield. Well, Villa lose to a midfield of Henderson and Yarmouth, and not really ever get a grip on that midfield was disappointing. But Keith Andrews needed a good result, because if they'd lost again, there'd have been a load of noise around him that I think would have probably been unfair. So, well done to Brentford, but I thought Villa, from Villa's perspective, is a travesty.
In the last 2 weeks, has your mood slightly changed? Because I seem to remember at the start of the season you were like, look, Emery's there, the squad's good, this is fine, we haven't bought anyone, but it's fine. It doesn't sound like that now.
No, I'm hoping that Nicky's right and that kind of August is a lie, because I've not enjoyed August so far from a Villa's perspective, both on and off the pitch, with losing players and being hamstrung and not being able to really do anything unless we sell it. It's hard because the manager's so good. I'm loath to criticise the manager, because what he's done at this club has been absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen anything like it. I think tactically he's got a few things wrong in the first couple of games. We've looked toothless. We haven't scored in the first 2 games. And if I think Emery's kind of reign at Villa, it's about scoring goals and lots of goals. But the first 2 games we haven't looked like we were going to score once. I haven't got excited once. But I do think off the pitch there's kind of bled on the pitch now. Since Jacob Ramsey's gone, it seems to have done some real damage to the dressing room, and they just look like a lack of belief, and kind of players that are walking around kind of not knowing if they're going to be there or not at the end of the window, because of the rules and the constraints and how Villa are working under them. That it doesn't feel like a happy, cohesive place at the moment, and I just want the transfer window to shut. It's almost like we're waiting for the transfer window to shut for our season to start.
Sure, and like PSR obviously is hard if you're this club. But have they done things wrong?
Oh, yeah.
Their wage spend is 90% of their total revenue or something like that. So is that the mistake? I'm trying to work out where. Obviously, I can understand if you're a Villa fan, Newcastle fan, you're saying PSR is bullshit, and if it wasn't there, we'd be great. But are there things Villa could have done differently in the last few years to not put themselves in this position?
It's maybe more prior to Emery. They could have done stuff differently, but I still look at who I think Villa's best players are in the main, or in their best 11, and the bulk of them were already at the club when Unai Emery walked through the door. I think I saw a stat yesterday that since he's been at the club, Emery, Villa are £10 million in profit. So we've qualified for Europe every single season without actually spending a penny in terms of transfer fees, because we're 10 million in profit. We've done some sensible business over the years, and we've done some bad business over the years as well. But it's this revenue thing. We are never going to have the revenue that Manchester United have, that Chelsea have, that Manchester City have. It's just not going to happen. And you've been penalised for something that you're almost not in control of. And then the club can then try and put prices up and whatnot because they say they need to for PSR, and then that impacts the fans as well. So I just think all round PSR, it's impacting everyone involved with Aston Villa, but not in a positive way. I understand there has to be rules, but I do think it needs to be looked at, because it's absolutely killing us right now.
All right. Just a word on Mikael Damsgaard, who had some twinkle toes and played really well in that game. Finally, Bournemouth beat Wolves, their first win of the season. I like Pereira after the game, not complaining about the red card, just saying it's a pity. If only all managers did that after they had their centre-back sent off. But we fear for Wolves, do we, Nathan?
No, I don't fear for Wolves. I'll let Dan talk about that one. Tell me more about fearing for Wolves, Dan.
Do you look at that team and think that's a team that's not going to be involved in a relegation battle? And once you're involved in one, there's obviously then a chance that you're going to go down.
Yeah, I don't necessarily look at them I don't think they'll be going down, and I don't think they'll be in a full battle as such. But again, it's tough because again, it's August. Like, that's why every take I have at this point in the season always comes with that caveat, like, oh, it's early. You know what I mean? Like, Yokkers didn't do much last week. Oh, but it's early. Does well this week. Yeah, but it's early. Like, this team's not doing. Yeah, but it's early. So I personally don't think they'll be involved in a proper dogfight as such, because I still think they do have enough quality to carry themselves a little bit above, say, the potential bottom three. But you know, they do need to find some level of format. I understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't necessarily judge them based on, like, say, losing a game to City or away at Bournemouth, to be honest, even though Bournemouth aren't necessarily going to have the season that they had last year. I don't know who their next fixtures are, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got a result in the coming weeks.
How can you not know?
I know. Plastic Wolves fan.
Absolute outrage. That's okay. Newcastle play Liverpool tonight. We'll cover that on tomorrow's pod. Sam, your feelings going into this?
My feelings? I mean, how long have we got? It's
not long. 2 minutes, maybe one.
I'm looking forward to it, right? It's going to be a cracking night. There are obvious extra spicy elements to it. I like Dan, can't wait for the transfer window to shut. I think the big name is Alexander Isak. I do think he will be a Newcastle player, actually, come the transfer window closing. I think we'll see a lovely statement on September the 1st, written by his agent again, probably saying, oh, you know, there's been a lot of misunderstanding going on this summer. I'd like to apologise to the Newcastle fans who I've always loved, and Eddie Howe, who my relationship with him has never wavered. Let's look forward to a good season. # away the lads. And I think he'll spell it incorrectly and use like the Sunderland spelling or something like that. But look, tonight is...
Oh, yeah.
It's big, like that. Like, on the game itself, I think it was 3-3 last year, high intensity. I'm looking forward to it. Like, Liverpool have got defensively, they're still growing, sorting themselves out. Right, they haven't got a right back. Kirkes is still settling in. I wish we had a centre forward. Yes, of course I do. But Newcastle have got pace. The midfield battle will be brilliant. I don't think Slot and Eddie Howe are the kind of characters to, the stuff that's going on transfer-wise is way above their heads. And I don't think that will impact them. It will definitely impact the crowd. It will turn it up a decibel or two. I mean, without going into the exact stuff in detail, that's all I can say, really. It's been done plenty of times, and there's probably nothing new I can add.
A word on commentary, beat QPR 7-1. It's like your old days, Nadim, at Loftus Road.
Whoa. Don't be like that. Don't do that.
Same day the
Don't
club,
do that, my friend.
Same day the club announced they bought their ground. Apparently the XG was just over 1. Although looking at the highlights, it definitely didn't look. It looked more than 1. Watching them score 7, I must admit. Highlight of the game was the optimistic QPR player picking the ball out of the net in like the 92nd minute or something and running back to the centre circle. 7, we're still in this, lads.
Oh, Max, honestly, I hate you so much.
Mark Langdon messaged me this. Lots of people have seen it. Notts County subs yesterday. Gordon and Bennett, and just standing there perfectly next to each other. It's a lovely picture. We've got an EFL pod next Tuesday. Producer Joel hoping QPR stay terrible until the weekend when they host Charlton. Following presumably Charlton's humbling at Cambridge in the producer-presenter Football Weekly derby in the second round of the Carabao Cup on Tuesday. Sam, finally, you're at Morecambe. You had a busy weekend. You're at Morecambe for this injury time winner for their new manager.
It was wonderful. You know what? I mentioned Everton earlier, right? When I was sat there waiting for me dinner, watching, was it Ashley Young and Louis Saha speaking from on top of a hotel stand with a swimming pool at Fulham, and then panning to poor Palace fans who've been screwed over from multi-club ownership. I was just wishing I was back at Morecambe where football was so pure. Like it, Sani has done a brilliant job, our colleague, of covering the story. But I was chatting to fans outside, like there was this whole family, like 3 generations were there. There was this Scottish guy called Willie who'd come down 35 years ago to work at the power plant and become
Is
a
he the ground?
fan.
He's not the groundskeeper.
Not the groundskeeper. No.
Okay, fine.
And like he was talking about how it would have just left such a vacuum in his life. I chatted to Keith, who was the drummer, who started crying as he was telling me memories of like holding his son in his first game in the terrace. And they were like, what a difference a week makes. They were a week away from there being no football this season, and they were told they had to play the game because it was on DAZN. Manager out, manager in. They had 5 senior players on Monday. I think they signed a dozen. They had 2 training sessions together, which had to be limited to 60 minutes because the players haven't had a pre-season, right? You couldn't buy hot food. A tube of Pringles is all you could get in the ground. The new owners were there. They were introduced to Punjab Warriors. They scored after 6 minutes, and this guy, announcer, Mark Swindlehurst, who's been there 32 years, it was the best announcement I've ever heard. 6 minutes in, they score, and he just goes, well. And the crowd just went absolutely bananas. And then Altrincham equalised. And second half, they're holding on, right? Literally half of the Morecambe side are down with cramp. They really cannot cope. The players aren't physically in the place to be playing this game. And the manager, Ashvir Singh Jahal, who's a very interesting character, he switches formation. And he said to me afterwards, we hadn't played 5-3-2. So actually the players had to run over. I wrote it down on a bit of paper where they were all going to play. And I showed it to them. 10 minutes injury time, he is absolutely fuming. And then in the 8th minute, they break. And I watched him and he had his hands on his head. And a couple of seconds later, the ball ends up in the back of the net. And he's running down the touchline. It's almost Mourinho-esque. The ground is exploding. Swindlehurst is back going, well. And it was just the sheer joy. The owners are up there celebrating. Like, the fans had said to me beforehand, if we get relegated this season, it doesn't matter because at least it's football we get to talk about again. It's not stuff off the field. And you couldn't have scripted it any better. It was absolutely perfect. The next day, Sunday, having all cramped up, they had a coach to Aldershot, where they've got a game at Aldershot on Bank Holiday Monday. They've got a whole load of new players, but they're just playing football and they have a football club, and it was wonderful.
Listen, beautifully articulated there, Sam. No better place to end this podcast, I think. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Dan.
Thank you, Max.
Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Daniel.
Catch with me, Ayo Akinwolere. Nuno Espirito Santo says he won't walk away from Nottingham Forest, but behind the scenes, it's a bit of a mess. So what is going on? And is it fixable? Right, for this one, we've got Adam Crafton and also the man on Friday who revealed the discontent between Nuno and Nottingham Forest global head of football, Edu. It's Danny Taylor. Danny, good to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
All right, Danny, on Friday, Nuno Espirito Santo talked about the change in dynamic between himself and owner Evangelos Marinakis. Now, Forest never seemed to be far from the headlines, but after such a successful season last time out, this seems really early to be at crisis point, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, really, and it's very difficult to know where it's going to end up. Nuno's press conference last Friday was obviously quite shocking, really, because especially, I mean, he rarely says anything in press conferences. He's very composed. It's very difficult for journalists to get too much out of him. So for him to kind of reveal so much and speak so directly about the owner of all people was quite something, and obviously shocked a lot of people. There is a lot of context to that on the morning before his press conference. I mean, he and all of us woke up to stories that basically the owner was considering sacking him. And one part of this whole sort of story is, who leaked that story and was it maliciously timed, just to cause him damage just before his own press conference. So Nuno, he's very methodical. He thinks about exactly what he's going to say in a press conference. So he knew what he was doing. It wasn't just an emotional outpouring. What he didn't do is name the person who he really has an issue with, which is Edu, who rather astonishingly has only been there since July the 7th officially. That's the issue, but that's a big issue because obviously Marinakis brought Edu in to from Arsenal, not just with Forest, but he's the global technical director, so he's taking charge of Olympiacos and their Portuguese club as well, Rio Ave. But basically, it's the idea that if it's got to be one of them, the idea that Marinakis is going to dispose of Edu, having sort of anchored himself so sort of firmly with this guy, it's very hard to imagine. So there has to be some sort of peace talks initially, but I mean, it was described to me last week that it's gone too far, for that. The relationship's broken. It's beyond fixing. Nuno's comments at the weekend suggested that he thought that was not the case, but we'll have to see because it feels, as it stands, it feels difficult to imagine that all these people are going to essentially, shake hands and decide to move on, without any lingering bad feeling, and just put this behind them because this is football and that rarely happens. But, I hope as someone that's sort of grown up supporting the club that can happen, but it just feels slightly unlikely.
Yeah. What do you make of it all, Adam? Nuno airing the laundry so publicly, especially to the media.
Yeah, as Danny says, it's very unusual. I've been to a couple of Nuno press conferences and he's on I would say, the level of Graham Potter in terms of the likeliness of actually, he feels like one of those people that actually goes to the press conference with the intent of not saying anything at all. right? And you come away sometimes being like, well, what was the point of that? So for him to be as direct and frank as he was, it felt incredibly deliberate, very intentional in what he was saying. He clearly wanted the matter to be brought to a head in some ways. It felt like he'd been advised by someone as well to perhaps speak in that way, as though, I'm not sure who that would be in his life that would be saying, just answer this question honestly. Even when there was then follow-up questions, sometimes you'll see a head coach go, so actually, I think I've answered that now. But he kind of carried on. I mean, he seemed to answer whatever he was subsequently asked in that press conference, as far as I could tell. So it's pretty dramatic. It's also pretty dramatic just because of what we know about the owner, or the guy who's put the club in the blind trust, at least, Evangelos Marinakis, because this is, I think we're pretty clear at this point, this is not a guy who most people are going to win against in confrontation. And he's not someone whose ego is easily bruised or wants to look at, or someone who, I suppose, wants rivals for power at his club. I mean, the amount of posts you'll see from Nottingham Forest referring to Mr. Marinakis and Mr. Marinakis's actions and his team. I mean, they've almost stopped calling themselves Nottingham Forest at a certain point, and it seems to be more about him at times. So for Nuno to attempt to rival that and dictate where the club is heading, I think was a pretty brave step.
Yeah. Danny, do you reckon someone had a word in his ear? Do you reckon someone perhaps said, you know what, use this press conference to air your grievances?
I'm not too sure. I mean, he could have, as Adam says, he could have done the classic manager trick of, I've been too busy, coaching the team to deal with this. When he was initially asked about the sacking report, so he had his own strategy. I mean, he's very popular with the fans, but he's had a bit of criticism for that from the fans because they think that he went too far, but this is without really understanding the politics of it. Like the idea that Nuno, who yesterday after the Palace match was talking about the beautiful time he'd had at Forest, the idea that he would put that at jeopardy with a press conference outburst without there being something serious that's happened in the background for him to put him in that position where he would come out, he would challenge the owner. It was almost Mourinho-esque, in a way, but I just don't think that's credible that he would just, something would pop in his head. He's very meticulous. He thinks about what he's doing. He can be emotional, but basically something has made him do this, and that something is this, huge row. It's not just a tiff or a fallout or working with someone that he doesn't really click with. It's aggressive. It's and it's from day one. Something happened in that first meeting. Something was said, whether it was deliberate or not, and possibly wasn't even deliberate, that Nuno has taken offence to. And then it's just got worse and worse. And of the two, I think I wrote this in the piece on Friday, Nuno's almost been the aggressor in terms of just behind the scenes, like in terms of how he sees Edu and his willingness to kind of have dialogue with him, and it's just a really unhealthy situation. I mean, there was one interesting line from him yesterday when I actually asked him in the press conference afterwards if the three of them needed to kind of treat it as a priority and sit down and try and hammer this out, and he said, it's not just the three of us, and that got me thinking. This is only a little bit of supposition on my part, but Edu obviously comes very closely aligned with Kia Joorabchian, who's a very powerful football advisor and businessman, and also very closely aligned to Marinakis. Joorabchian, is no doubt about it, has been a big player at Forest in this summer, and going even a little bit further back. Forest signed a couple of his players, but his influence goes a bit further. So, but he and Edu in particular are very, very close. So there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes, and it's just can there be peace talks? I think that is the big question, and As I say, I mean, it's difficult as it stands to imagine that everything's just going to get ironed out. It might for a short while, but then what happens if they lose 2 or 3 games in a row? Or, I just think this is going to keep coming back.
Danny, I was just going to ask that. If they'd have lost 3-0 yesterday, do you think he'd have been fired?
I think it would have turned up the heat dramatically. I think they had to avoid losing yesterday. I cannot say. This is the question everyone's been asking me. Do you think he'll be? It's just I cannot put myself in Marinakis' mindset here. This is almost, and this is almost. You can almost sympathise with him a little bit here. When he brought Edu in here, I made this point in the article. Forest, I've never read a statement where the opening line is "Football Club is proud to announce." They were so kind of like chuffed that they'd taken this, leading executive from Arsenal, and they saw it as like a real like kind of status, kind of something to show off about. And as I say, he's not just at Forest; he's at Olympiacos, he's at Rio Ave. It's something that they were so proud to kind of announce. And then, so on the one hand, you've got this, and you've got Marinakis like really thinking, this has taken months by the way. This has taken absolutely months for him to persuade Edu to make that break from Arsenal and come to Forest. And then on the other hand, you've got a popular manager who's taken Forest into Europe, and it's, as I say, it's literally on day one, that relationship between those 2 people, which should be the second most important relationship within the club pretty much, has broken. And it's got worse and worse since then. And, Marinakis could never have imagined that would be the case. And to be fair to him, he may well have assumed that Nuno would be willing to adapt to this kind of new regime. Again, that comes back to what's happened behind the scenes, what exactly has been said. And that's perhaps the missing link of this sort of jigsaw to complete the story, because we don't know exactly what's been said. And is Nuno overreacting, or has something been said that's pretty bad?
Was that story true, that they were considering firing?
Again, I can't put myself in Marinakis' story whether he was considering sacking him, but it's certainly true that basically the relationship had gone to pot, and because so far Marinakis has aligned himself with Edu. Edu is a more senior person in the company. There's no getting away from it, and managers, whether we like it or not, kind of quickly dispensed with, and replacements are found. And Marinakis has done that many times. Edu was seen as someone that's going to take Forest and Olympiacos and basically take them to the high level. So Edu is more important in that world than Nuno. So this is why I see a lot of Forest fans saying, well, get rid of Edu. He's only been here 2 minutes. But it's not that simple. Edu's seen as a bigger piece of it, and unless Marinakis, I can't see Marinakis can decide within 40 odd days that Edu is doing a bad job. It's not ideal that he and Nuno obviously got off to such a terrible start, but as I say, Marinakis so far is aligned with Edu, and Nuno has pretty much admitted that by saying that me and Marinakis aren't talking so much. Our relationship has been damaged. We don't talk. The bond has been, broken, whether it's temporary or going to be on a longer basis.
Yeah, Danny, I mean, a lot of people might be thinking, you remember when Nottingham Forest played Leicester last season, it was 2-2, and then Marinakis confronts Nuno at the end of the match. There was a fair bit of heat there, but in terms of this situation as well, is there any sense of Edu or Marinakis' perspective on what Nuno has said?
No. There's not been anything said from their side. That Leicester game, I mean, that was a very, very damaging day for Forest. I mean, if it wasn't for that, they were playing one of the worst teams in the Premier League, and they were winning, and just had a bad 10 minutes, and the thing with Taiwo Awoniyi was he should have been substituted. It was pretty obvious he wasn't, and Forest effectively were man down, and Leicester obviously came back. And that, if it wasn't for that game, Forest would have been. I mean, Forest finished 7th, so obviously Europa. I know things have changed now, but essentially, if it wasn't for that game, the whole Champions League dream could have been on. So Yeah, Marinakis, I mean, going on the pitch, I mean, the Forest, the story that they came up with was that basically it was out of concern for Tyro's health. Do you believe that? It wasn't a good look. Listen, Forest it's run differently to other clubs. I think everyone accepts that, even the supporters. That is the sort of thing that, if that happened at another club, the Forest fans would be like, this is amazing, this is ridiculous, because it happened at Forest, it kind of like, it almost got excused in the end. But yeah, it wasn't a good look, but I don't think there's a parallel to be drawn with that and with what's happening now, perhaps. I think that was just, a classic kind of the owner being very emotional, which he is, as we all know, and sort of heat of the moment stuff. And that's the sort of thing that happens in Greece. Yeah, and obviously, this for a long time was the big thing with the kind of, this regime, the cultural differences of what was the norm in Greece isn't the norm here, and by their own admission, they would admit this, that took them a long time to kind of grasp. That part of it is that they think that the mentality in Nottingham with the Forest fans needs to change a bit. They can't believe that if Forest lose and play well, that the Forest fans will sometimes, for example, seem relatively okay with that. They want there to be, an outcry every time Forest loses, and the standards to be, what's accepted to change because of how it is in Greece. So, but anyway, to answer your question, I don't think the two are related. I just think I can understand why people might look at the two, because what happened again in the Leicester game was so unusual. But no, not myself.
It's clear that there's a bond between Nottingham Forest fans, and you can hear it as they were singing praises for Nuno at full time on Sunday after their 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace. Now, Danny, you were at Selhurst Park, and we'll get into the banner a little later on. So, fans singing for Nuno, how likely is it that Marinakis is going to listen to the wishes of the fans?
There was certainly an interesting moment after the game when Nuno went over there, and I saw the clip afterwards where, not everyone might have seen it, but Morgan Gibbs-White was almost kind of rallying the fans to sort of sing louder and stuff. So I thought that was quite key, because he's not only very popular with the fans, Nuno, but he's also incredibly popular with the players. So I think that will certainly be in Marinakis' mind. They always, if they are thinking of moving out a manager, they normally do sort of have a quiet chat with a couple of senior players, and the players are very, very much behind him, and always have been, really. The other thing is that the fans, this season's been the first time they've also been singing Marinakis' name. So it's this incredibly weird dynamic of the fans supporting what the owner does, but they're also supporting what the manager does. And it's just kind of almost, nobody wants it to be a popularity contest, but there's already, when you look online, there's already a bit of a kind of a divide. Should they go with what the owner wants, or should they stick it with the manager? The one person that's sort of a little bit on the outside of this is Edu, because he hasn't been there long enough to kind of gain the popularity, and obviously as an exec, he's never really going to be in that position to do that, perhaps. But the Forest have spent a lot of money again this summer, so a lot of fans are also questioning why he's come under fire when they see the recruitment this summer as being positive. But again, that just all comes back to this sort of huge question of, well, Nuno isn't happy, he doesn't like Edu. It's as simple as that. There's hostility, proper genuine hostility, and how in a football context do you remove that?
Adam, I don't know whether or not Nuno publicly speaking has meant that Nottingham Forest have stuck their hand in their pocket, but they've made a heap of transfers. Hutchinson, and Doy. We've got Douglas Luiz as well. What have you made of their business?
I'm not sure quite what order it happened in, but I remember, was it last week? He was sort of talking in a press conference about how they're not ready and they need more bodies. And then it felt like within 24 hours they had a whole new team. That had been signed up, and I don't know whether a kind of Nuno's comments triggered that, whether it was already in the works. I think they've had a strange summer. I think it's taken them too long. I think maybe part of that is also just because of the the fact they didn't know which European competition they were going to be in. So probably the revenue and income that they were going to have, whether it was the Conference League or the Europa League, is different. So that may have had an impact, to be fair. So they've maybe had to do their business a bit later. Equally, I think it's been reasonably clear since probably the turn of the year that Forest would be in European competition of some sort. So their targets should have been pretty well established and lined up. I guess Edu maybe comes in slightly towards springtime as well, which maybe delays it slightly. In terms of the signings they've made, it's like the thing with Forest is it always feels like such a, like last season you got to a point where you actually tuned into Forest games and you knew what the team was going to be, which is kind of the first time we've felt like that about them since they started. Whereas now it's like all of a sudden it feels like you've got 5 or 6 new players coming in, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it is a bit disruptive to, you know, what was a very settled way of playing, a very settled team. I think it's unclear, you know, who is actually deciding which players are signed. Maybe Danny knows more about that. At times with Forest, it feels like there's all different influences going on. I mean, is Ross Wilson, the sporting director, still there at the moment? Obviously, he's been heavily linked with Newcastle.
I think once the transfer window is finished, that Ross will be, there'll be some sort of announcement that he's going to Newcastle. But to be honest, Ross, he does a lot of stuff at Forest and he's a big figure there, but he's not been particularly involved in the recruit. You know, he's not the guy who signs, who picks the next striker. You know, they've got various others who do that. There are a lot of people involved there. It's August is fraught at Forest. Every year it's fraught, and you know, even when they win their opening game, as we've seen this season, even when they win their opening game, if they don't win their opening game, it becomes even more fraught. And you know, the last week of the transfer window at Forest is a well, we've all seen it, haven't we? You know, it's pretty hectic, but it's also, you know, it's high pressure, and I mean they thrive on that. And this is you know, they also thrive on a bit of conflict. You know, they're not scared of a bit of conflict. You know, at times during the Marinakis empire, they've positively encouraged it. You know, this is what they do and how they do it, and the good for Forest has outweighed the bad. If you look at the whole 8 years of Marinakis' time here, the first 4 years were pretty lamentable, really. There was nothing great to enjoy about them, and obviously Steve Cooper came in. Forest had been bottom of the championship for 35 days, I think, and then from that point onwards, you know, it's been a bit of a roller coaster at times, but the overall good has been far better than the bad. You know, look at the club we're talking about now in Europe. £100 million worth of players on the bench yesterday, you know, showing ambition, playing great football, 2 players in the PFA Team of the Year. You know, this is a great time to be a Forest fan. It's just, and this is why, and people who support the club for a long time will have all sorts of examples about how this has happened in the past as well. This is why it's such a shame that something has come up out of nowhere that basically has sort of, you know, is in danger of torpedoing you know, what should be a great time. You know, the Europa League draws this Friday. You should, you know, I'm kind of, you know, I'm far too old to be excited about it, but I'm genuinely excited. You know, I went to Europe in '95 with Frank Clark's team, and you know, they're greatest as a fan. They were the greatest times you could have. And I kind of, you know, I grew up with a team that I kind of thought, you know, I grew up with Brian Clough's team thinking, you know, we're always going to be a top club, and then you have nearly a quarter of a century of drift and nothingness. And so these times at the moment should be special. And so this is the big shame why this has just come out of nowhere, really. You know, it's been bubbling away since Edu came in.
But that, you say it's been coming from nowhere, but I still think, you know, based on what, you know, that Leicester incident at the back end of last season, the way that Forest ended the season, where obviously the form tails off. I know pre-season doesn't really matter, but it also does. You know, pre-season, I think they scored like 1 goal in 7 games. You know, like on this podcast, like 2 weeks ago, when we were asked like who we a bit worried about, people did think Forest, because, and not because of the form, but because of the ownership, because of the kind of temperamentalism that we've seen under this ownership, where even when things are going up or going middling to up, there is this kind of capacity for conflicts that can just. But Nuno's never felt to me like someone that could be at Forest for 5 years, for example. I don't know if you think that's unfair.
Slightly. I agree with the wider point that Forest's big problem is that they can still be quite immature and volatile, and this is kind of like the classic situation of why I say that. However, the overall picture is great, and I haven't got any. I never had any worries for this season. If you look at Forest squad, I mean, they've obviously to sign 4 more players, but they had to sign players. I mean, all of a sudden you've got Europe to contend with as well. The problem last season until March, April, did very well in terms of like avoiding injuries. But if you lose, I mean, and then they lost Alarena, it's a right back, and basically all of a sudden that just kind of like, so they had to like switch the left back to play right back, and the whole team was all of a sudden it was out. That was like one injury basically. So yeah, I do accept that, you know, the form at the end of last season won't help Nuno in this. You know, I think they got 8 points from the last 8 games, and some of those games were, you know, home against Leicester, Brentford, Everton. Yeah, it wasn't great. That will count against him, but overall, you know, people can see what a great job he's done. It can be volatile. It's temperamental. You never know what's around the corner.
Yeah, Danny, we have to talk about the banner held up by Palace fans. It depicted Evangelos Marinakis holding a gun to the head of Morgan Gibbs-White with the words, "Mr. Marinakis is not involved in blackmail, match fixing, drug trafficking or corruption." Marinakis has strongly denied any wrongdoing in relation to these allegations. And I must also say the FA are investigating the banner. Strict rules dictate banners cannot show defamatory, political or offensive slogans or contain offensive language. Any indications, Danny, of Forest's reaction to this?
I mean, how many times did they libel him? It was an astonishing banner, and I mean, Forest will absolutely complain about it, and there will be people going into overdrive behind the scenes as we're talking, and not just as we're talking, but there were newspapers getting phone calls at half time yesterday. You know, basically take this down or you're going to be in a whole world of pain. That was at half time. I think the very interesting point here is, so if I just bring it back into Forest have a fan group called Forza Garibaldi, and whenever they put up a big, you know, big display, they have to, like, you know, put it through the club, and they work together, and it's all kind of like meticulously sort of choreographed. And I think Palace's equivalent is a bit more rogue and a little bit less, you know, they kind of see themselves as a bit more kind of, you know, I passed them yesterday. It's kind of, you know, they've got their black T-shirts with the Ultras on the back, and you know, they kind of, I think they see themselves as a bit more kind of Italian, you know, we're a bit cooler than, you know, we're a bit more rogue and a bit more, you know, wild. And so, you know, rather than, but did Palace know? I think that's the big question. How do you get a banner that size? You know, because at the start that I was watching them, think, you know, like they were working with the stewards about how to get the big display at the start of the game together. So that was one thing. But then how do you get a banner that size into the ground and then hold it? And I didn't see anyone kind of trying to basically go in there and say, you need to get this down. Palace haven't apologised. They haven't distanced themselves from it. They haven't tweeted anything. I don't think they've said anything behind the scenes, unless I'm just not privy to those conversations. So, which hasn't helped, because they could have come straight out and say, you know, we disapprove, we're sorry, you know, I mean, basically, this is I know there's a bit of bad feeling there between the clubs because of the whole Europa League situation, but I think that they could have tweeted to say, this is not how we as a club feel, or we as a club want to be seen as behaving, and try to do something, because that's a bad one for the relationship at the top levels of the club. And I know there's already a bit of beef, but I mean, some of that beef's a bit cartoonish, you know. Steve Parish was chatting fine with with the people from Forest at the game yesterday. Some it's not open warfare. However, that was, I've never seen that happen before in the Premier League with something that size, and just knowing the people involved. That is, you don't underestimate how badly that was received.
Yeah, I guess from a fan's perspective, Adam, I mean, it's an astonishing banner, but inevitably, I mean, how much is fueled right now between both clubs in terms of one being in the Europa Conference League and the other being graduated to the Europa League?
Yeah, for sure. I think the Palace hierarchy and the way that they kind of handled media over the summer, through whether it was briefings or even on the record interviews, I think they did a pretty good job of making sure it was everyone but themselves being blamed for the situation that they were in. I have some sympathy for them because I think the rules were pretty unfair, to be honest, in terms of the way that they were laid out with the deadline. But at the same time, it's a tricky one. I'm not sure every club in the league would have done what Forest did in terms of being as opportunistic and, getting in there as kind of forcefully as they did. However, I can understand why they did it. I think probably many of the Forest fans would expect their club, to try and take that opportunity if it presents themselves. It's also, I think there was a lot of people at the end of last season that felt Forest deserved better based on the totality of the season than a Conference League place, based on where they'd been during the season, given that, the way it just tailed off slightly at the end. So I think that's tricky. I mean, good luck to the FA if they actually start investigating. I mean, what are they investigating? Like, what are they, when the FA say they're investigating, it's basically this is awkward, and this is, alleging a lot of different things. I guess it would come under something like, I don't know, unsporting behaviour or something like that in the stands, or something along those lines. I think as well, obviously, like, fans can't go round libelling. I guess Palace fans would argue that their banner was very, very careful in terms of saying that Marinakis was not into XYZ. Then you get into a semantics of, by saying not, does that really mean not, right? In terms of the banner, that's probably something the FA have to look into. I think Palace themselves, their fans group is actually, as Danny says, it's one of the more kind of, not militant in a they're going to go round attacking people sense, but in a, they do the tifos, they do the banners, they do the signs. When Newcastle came just after the Saudi takeover a couple of years ago, they had a very, very graphic image as well. And I think Palace see that as part of their strength at Selhurst Park. So I think they will be reluctant to go against their own fans, which makes for an awkward situation. I imagine the people who will probably end up taking the brunt of this in terms of the phone calls are the Premier League and the FA, who will probably be getting calls from Forest saying, make sure this never ever happens again.
Okay. Next, let's get back to Nuno Espirito Santo and ask what happens next. Well, Danny, this is the one, really. I mean, you sort of alluded to it at the top of the podcast, feeling that this situation has got to a point where we're not quite sure where it might go. But is there a way back? Do you know what might be happening next?
Well, I suppose you could call them peace talks, although whether they'll end up being peace, we'll have to see, won't we? But Nuno basically made that point yesterday, and he said that he was sure that it could be resolved. Again, he would have thought about what he was going to say, and there's a slight part in my cynical journalistic mind of wondering whether he was almost saying that to kind of a little bit of PR for himself, just to kind of like make it seem that, make it obvious that he's willing for there to be a reconciliation, to make the fans know that. I'd like to think there can be, but for the reasons I outlined earlier. Really, I'm not so sure that in reality that they can just shake hands when it's been so kind of hostile. It's, like I say, this isn't a fallout over, well, I like this fullback and you like that fullback, and I've seen some some reports, and then some Forest fans have latched onto it about it being about Adama Traore. You know, it's true. You know, Nuno wanted him. This isn't about Traore. You know, it's a much bigger thing than that. You know, they went to Fulham. Fulham asked for money that Forest weren't willing to spend. They started looking at other options. They always look. You know, they've always got, for every position in the team, they've always got between 8 and 12 options. You know, so yeah, I'm not certain. I'd love to give you a clear answer about, you know, definitively he will stay or he won't stay. I think this will limp along. There are some similarities here between the same case that happened with Aitor Karanka, which was a few years ago. You know, he too fell out with someone in the hierarchy. In his case, it was the chief executive, Yanis Vrentos, who is still a director, but he's based in Greece now. And Vrentos and Karanka, their relationship just imploded. And that kind of just limped along for about 6 weeks or so. And then in the end, Karanka sort of, you know, was I think they termed it that he'd asked to be released from his contract. He just, I mean, that was with Forest again in a good position. You know, that was one place outside the playoffs in the Championship, and it was all because of a relationship breakdown in the background. And at that time, Marinakis wasn't so hands-on. So by the time he flew in to kind of like, you know, see what the situation was, Karanka's mind was made up. You know, he decided enough was enough. And this is a man, by the way, who had, you know, a former Real Madrid player. You know, was used to the politics at the Bernabeu, and but he was worn down by it at Forest. You know, he you know, his wife had stopped going to games because of the atmosphere and stuff. So you know, it can be a challenging position. You know, Steve Cooper. You know, there's all sorts of stories of when Steve Cooper was there. You know, I mean, this isn't a particularly new story, but I remember when the Premier League released the fixtures in Steve Cooper's last season, Forest did a little video to kind of like get a bit of excitement among the fans. You know, it's a little kind of like montage of clips from the previous season. It's the sort of thing that every website does, every football club website does, and put it on their social media, and then all of a sudden it was sort of mysteriously removed. And that was because at the top of the club they'd seen it, and they didn't like the fact that it showed Steve Cooper 3 or 4 times. You know, they didn't think the manager should get that kind of coverage and that element of praise. And so basically this kind of harmless clip that the fans had enjoyed watching, just to sort of, you know, to coincide with fixture release day, sort of just disappeared. So yeah, it can be challenging. On the flip side, the owner will back the manager and he'll back the club, and this is partly why the fans really like him, because even if you don't support the club, you might see it differently, but because because he's willing to go to war for Forest, the fans will go to war for him. You know, it's that classic sort of siege mentality attitude. And you know, Marinakis will back the manager. You know, at the end of last season, he said to Nuno, "What do you want?" And Nuno said, "I need." This is again, it's a bit weird that we're talking about Nuno told him he wanted two teams now. He needed two lots of 11 because last season we only had 11 really, and then we had like 2 or 3 substitutes, and then we had people filling in who really weren't good enough. So Marinakis has backed him again, like huge outlay of money. So he must be incredibly frustrated that having spent all this, he's now being challenged by the manager. The two people that really should be working closely together have just completely blown their relationship apart. And now he's got a decision to make.
One thing I was going to ask Danny is there's been speculation about Ange Postecoglou potentially going to Forest. Do you think Forest are at a stage where they're already thinking about who the next coach could be?
I think Forest is a club that are always, you know how it works, that if you're a well-run club, you're always got your kind of list of managers who you would bring in.
And if you're a badly run club, you've always got your list of
it's almost not unusual. You know, I sometimes think, I'm not sure every supporter gets that. You know, like if that is part of being, you know, like having those plans in place. You know, and there's always discussion. You know, politics and discussions going on behind the scenes. You know, there's. It was the journalist in it. Excuse me. It was the journalist in Italy who mentioned Ange first, who had done the stories about that Nuno's position is in doubt, and that was obviously leaked by someone with a reason, presumably. So yeah, I would treat it seriously. I mean, Postecoglou is someone that he's one of on their list of managers they speak to regularly. I remember when Forest were promoted and Steve Cooper went over to Greece, they would quite often do this, invite the manager over in the summer. And Ange was there sitting around the pool. There's a relationship there. Ange did an interview recently, while he was at Tottenham, and he's talking about Marinakis as the president. He's kind of using the language that a manager would use. But there are others. They love Marco Silva. Marco Silva was the Olympiacos manager when they were there. There's still a relationship there. They still talk to Marco Silva in a very friendly way behind the scenes. It was going to be either Nuno or Oliver Glasner for the job. And Nuno got it. Oliver Glasner's kind of not very happy at Palace. I mean, there's part of my wicked evil side would find it quite amusing if Steve Parish suddenly got an email on his desk requesting permission to speak to Oliver Glasner. But I mean, Forest is an attractive proposition, really. Yes, we've talked about it being volatile and a bit kind of...
it doesn't sound like an easy place to work. Come on, Danny.
It's not, but managers, they see the ambition, they see the fact that the owner's backing them, and I still think it's an attractive place to work. It's kind of... It's not perfect, but it's an upwardly mobile football club for the time being.
That's it for the Forest chat for the time being. But before we go, Adam, the final word goes to you. It's time for the final whistle.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
Evening 3-hour Monday Night Club on the way this evening, because there is a huge game in the Premier League. So it'll be like a listen along for 3 hours tonight. Newcastle against Liverpool at St James's Park. Hayley Barber is there for us.
Good evening, Mark, for a game that has been referred to as the Isak Derby or El Isaco due to the transfer saga of Alexander Isak, which adds a bit of spice to a game that probably doesn't need much added to it, particularly on a sunny bank holiday. The public houses were rather busy on my walk up to the stadium. In terms of those players who are involved tonight, though, Newcastle, they are light in numbers. They go with the same 11 that started against Villa, so Anthony Gordon continues to lead the line for them. Liverpool, they make 2 changes. With Gravenberch back from suspension, he replaces Alexis McAllister, who is missing for personal reasons, and at right back it will be Curtis Jones replacing the injured Frimpong, with Connor Bradley fit enough for a place on the bench.
We're not going with that, are we, for the rest of the evening? Are we?
It's one and done. One and done.
Thank you. Plenty more from Hayley throughout the course of the evening. Plenty of other live sport going on. Jack Draper in action in the first round of the US Open. This is on Sports Extra if you want to listen to it. Katie Smith.
Yeah, the British #1 back in action here for the first time, back in action on any sort of tennis court since that shock early exit at Wimbledon 7 weeks ago. He's been struggling with this injury to his serving arm, a bone stress. So far, so good here at Flushing Meadows. He's a set and a break up against the Argentine qualifier Federico Gomez. This is his first round match. He is just fending off a break point at the moment, but he's looking to repeat his run to the semi-finals last year. This time around, he's ranked number 5 in the world. Says he feels like more of man than boy this time around, and a lot being said of his bulked up physique, which he's showing off in a sleeveless shirt here in the hot sunshine. Cam Norrie, the British #2, already through to the second round a little earlier. His opponent Seb Corder retiring injured, with Cam Norrie 2 sets to love up.
Thank you. So that's on Sports Extra. Sports Extra 3 on BBC Sounds if you want Oval Invincibles against London Spirit in the 100. Stephen Finn.
Yep, the Oval Invincibles, in their quest to make it straight through to next Sunday's final, have won the toss and bowled first. They were put under the pump in the first part of the innings by Jamie Smith and David Warner, but they've come back into the game now. We're at the halfway stage, 50 out of 100 balls bowled. The London Spirit are 64 for 3, and just a reminder, if the Oval Invincibles win this game, they will almost certainly go straight to the final on Sunday.
Stephen, thank you. Welcome to the Monday Night Club. You can listen to us on 5 Live or on BBC Sounds. You can watch us on the iPlayer or on the BBC Sport YouTube channel. If you are watching, there are 2 or 3 things that you already have noticed. By complete fluke, we are all wearing a white T-shirt tonight. We look like we're some 90s boy band. You will also notice there's no Chris Sutton this evening. He has other commitments, which is disappointing. And you will also notice that Rory looks like he's in Alan Titchmarsh's garden shed.
I'm not. I'm in the Alps, chappers.
Are you?
broadcasting to you internationally.
Now that is commitment.
It's not a holiday unless you have to break off in the middle of the evening to speak to you. That's my attitude on holidays, Chappers.
Did that go down well with the family, that you were going to miss 3 hours this evening?
Generally, my wife is of the view that it's better if I'm not there. So she's quite happy.
Theo, as ever, out of any pundit, has the best background possible. Have you changed your sort of trophy wall for the new season?
I'll be honest, Chappers, I've not earned anything else. I have brought this, though, little guy I got, actually, from a fan. It's a little Walcott 14, little bobblehead. Yeah, so I got given that, so I thought he's going to stay in the office with me. So he's the new addition to the trophy cabinet.
Okay, so you've got a very small statue of yourself.
Very small. It's not like Thierry Henry outside the Emirates, put it that way.
Blimey, and I thought Sutton had the ego on the show. Right, so Theo, Steph is in the studio with me, so there's nothing really to bring up there.
Not really, just your normal cup of coffee or cup of tea.
Yeah, just do your job, and there we are.
Just be in the studio,
Well, you can go first then on our first subject. There is so much to talk about tonight. Obviously, week 2 of the Premier League season, 3-hour show, because we'll be back and forth to St James's Park for Newcastle against Liverpool, and we'll talk more about those two in maybe half an hour's time or so. We'll talk goalkeepers, we'll talk Arsenal and Max Dowman, we'll talk what on earth is going on at Rangers with a week to go, the transfer window, we'll look at that. Jack Grealish enjoying his football again, Nottingham Forest and Nuno. How do Manchester United actually score a goal? How good it is for the promoted teams that they've all won a game. That's just some of the stuff we hope to get through between now and 10 o'clock. But we're starting with good news, we're starting with positive news, and we're starting with Tottenham. And that hasn't really gone together very often over recent seasons.
Definitely not in the Monday Night Club for a few months. But yeah, I think I was at the game on Saturday and obviously watched them in the Super Cup, but also doing Final Score, watched the whole game against Burnley. And yeah, very, very impressed with Tottenham. I think there's definitely a spark, but I think Thomas Frank, I love watching his Brentford side play, but I think he's implemented basic stuff for Tottenham in terms of that intensity and pressing, just to want to play football and bring energy. And especially against Manchester City on Saturday, they really stifled City, if I'm being honest.
So, I mean, you've watched all 3 90 minutes then of their games this season. Paris Saint-Germain, Burnley at home, Manchester City away. Each system, game plan, lineup has been different.
Yeah, crazy. And you would think when a new manager comes in, you probably want that little bit of stability. You want probably the same formation, same starting 11. And yeah, I think that just shows how much work's being done on the training pitch and how much the players are buying into Thomas Frank's method, because obviously we watched Tottenham a lot last season under Postecoglou, and yeah, of course they came away with the European trophy, but in terms of the style of play, I think we're all a little bit confused of what Tottenham were trying to do in different parts of different games. But for me, in Thomas Frank, it's about competing 1v1, winning individual battles, but also I think when you've got a defensive Van de Ven and Romero who's so reliable in them 1v1 battles, you can press aggressively all over the pitch, and ultimately when they're having chances, they're scoring and taking them.
What have you made of them, Theo?
To be fair, Steph has really hit the nail on the head in everything she said, so I have no other words for Tottenham, to be honest. No, I'm only... No,
you owe me,
to be honest. No, to be honest, what I'm really impressed with, I always want the... I know we call it big 6 teams or whatever we call it these days, to perform in the league, because we don't want teams to run away with it. And what I've been really intrigued with Tottenham is, like Steph said there, the energy side of things, because they're not a bunch of superstars. They're a bunch of players that really want to work hard for each other. I think someone like Thomas Frank is really reminded, the personnel. Like, for instance, I play with Richarlison, and at times he could frustrate the hell out of you. He really could, because he's a kind of player who's a slight maverick in the team. But the big change in him, he's working his socks off, and it starts from the front. It always tends to start from the front. I think someone like Thomas Frank, he just gets the best out of individuals, and then bring those individuals together, and they're just, honestly, the midfield at this moment in time has so much energy. They all outrun any team, and his Brentford teams outrun a lot of teams in the Premier League. So, and they are being a bit more direct, and I think it's the slow build-up at times can really confuse players, they just want to go back to basics, really. They really have, and get the ball in the other half and then let them make mistakes. And it's a bit like a tennis game, isn't it? When you just keep the rally going, just wait until the other guy makes a mistake. And I think Tottenham are, with the additions they've signed as well, I think they've got a good balance. And I'll be worried about them this year. They're going to always improve. They were always going to improve with Thomas Frank, regardless, because I think he's a top manager.
Just on the being direct, Stefan, I'm going to come back to you on this. I know Rory's taking time from his holiday, but but I will talk to you at some point. I'm not just going to leave you sitting there.
That'd be amazing if you just didn't talk to me at all. That'd be fantastic.
There's an element of me that would find that really funny, but kind of now and impossible to pull off. Rob Green and Troy, Rob Green's going to join us in a little while, but Rob Green and Troy Deeney did this analysis on Match of the Day last night on the patterns that Tottenham had tried to implement 2 or 3 times before the goal actually came, at the opening goal at Manchester City, which was try and go down the line into Kudus's feet and then be able to flip City and get in behind them. So there was a real tactical plan there. So when we talk about the directness, it's not trying to go 60 yards to hit Richarlison's head. It's about going 35 yards into someone's feet to try and start the counter-attack.
Yeah, I think obviously Theo mentioned in terms of them individuals being able to perform, but ultimately it's about putting that together as a team. And I think, for me, tactically they were better than Manchester City on Saturday, and it's not very often you say that against a Pep Guardiola side, but it was so obvious that they knew that Manchester City were going to hold that high line that they do, and to be able to drag full-backs out to create space for runs in behind and take the chance that John Stones slips and they get in and Richarlison gets in with his runs, and he kept on making them runs. He kept on being a bit of a nuisance to Diaz and Stones all game. And I think for me, you've got a quality player in Kudus. I think he's an unbelievable signing. Everything that he did on Saturday, he made something happen. He caused a problem for Aït-Nouri before he went off. Then and then Ake came on and he caused him problems. Allowed Ake couldn't really get forward to support the attack because he's so worried about what he was going to do in behind. So I think Tottenham were very efficient, and I think Theo touched on the midfield. I think for me, outstanding. I think Paulinho is an unbelievable signing because of his understanding, but also his physical capabilities to break up play, but also start attacks.
He won 8 duels in that game against Manchester City, did Paulinho. We'll come to Rory. I'm not doing this deliberately. We'll come to Rory in a moment. First of all, let's hear from Thomas Frank after the win at City.
I love my former club, Brentford, and I'm falling in love with this club here. But there were similarities. This is, of course, a great group of players as well.
And if not quite in love with your players yet, they're certainly earning your respect. Are you quite surprised by how quickly they've taken on your methods?
Yeah, I think what I would say is that what they did the last couple of years and last season was, of course, a tough season, but ending on a high. I came into the club and I saw a strong mentality in the players, a strong togetherness, and we just tried to build on that.
And it was another team performance. I know Pat Matar-Sarr's got the official man of the match, but you could have picked all 11, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think the team overall performed so well, worked so hard throughout the game. So, yeah, very, very happy. It's a good game, and then on to the next.
Thomas Frank with Guy Mowbray. I do say this every time, Rory. We are a bit biased because we have spent time with him when he was at the Euros with us, and he was very good company. But it doesn't feel like he very rarely puts a foot wrong.
Yeah, I think that it sounds a little bit buzzwordy, but I think the thing that really stands out to you about Frank is like his emotional intelligence. He seems to be a really good reader of people. He has an understanding of the way that people work. And yeah, you spent more time with him than I have, obviously, but just speaking to him a little bit, you kind of get the sense of, you can see why he would improve players. You can understand how he would want to work with individuals to get the best out of them. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about him moving from Brentford, where he was working with players who came up through the leagues with them, into people like Ethan Pinnock, and then players maybe from less stellar backgrounds, I guess, people like Mikkel Damsgaard, who been kind of a big thing in Denmark, and maybe not done brilliantly in Italy, and then had come to the Premier League. Frank worked really hard to improve them, and he turned Brentford into a more than combative Premier League team. And logically, that should work with Tottenham. As you mentioned, there's no clear superstar at Tottenham. There's maybe one or two who who have come through as kind of, big things at some point in their career. But there are plenty of players there who've had to work their way up, who've earned moves from kind of, it sounds patronising, I don't mean it to be, but like second-tier clubs, clubs who are stepping stones to
such as
bigger
who,
and better
Rory?
things. Well, like Atalanta, Cuti Romero came from Atalanta, and that is a place where players go to prove themselves and win a move to a big club. Mickey van der Ven
he went with foreign clubs there. Just
yeah,
I thought, please don't say Sunderland.
not my first rodeo, Chad. They've got players from, Van der Ven came from Wolfsburg, I think, and obviously this was his step into the Premier League. Wolfsburg are a massive team, key part of the Volkswagen Empire and all that stuff, but they are not kind of one of the elite. There's no reason why he shouldn't be able to go in there and get into those players' heads that he is someone who can help them improve. And that principle, I think, should work at Spurs just as it worked at Brentford. And the difference, I guess, is the ceiling's higher. Like if he can make them all 1% better, then that turns Spurs into a genuine force. But I wanted to ask Stefan Theo something that I can't possibly understand. But having both of them played, how hard is it to do that thing that Frank makes his players do, where you switch formation between games and also within games? Because I sometimes wonder whether we outside get far too fixated on how teams line up at kickoff. Obviously during the game it doesn't really look like that, and I wonder whether with Frank it's much more important the principles that he plays with are what defines his teams rather than the shape they take.
I think for me, I think emotional intelligence, I understand what you're saying, Rory, and I feel as though Ange Postecoglou probably had that with his players, but I think when you're going back to systems and formation, I think that clarity is so important. And maybe that clarity wasn't there under Postecoglou, but I do feel with Frank that you can see the clarity's there in terms of what they are going to do when the goalkeeper has the ball. When James Trafford had the ball on Saturday, in terms of where everybody was, Manchester City players, you knew exactly. They were so brave in letting Romero, Mark Haaland 1v1. Probably last year Spurs aren't doing that. They're keeping Van der Ven with him just to try and secure when the ball goes longer. So for me, as a player, I think Theo can maybe back us up. Obviously, there's a lot of hard work goes on the training pitch, but also in the meeting room of what your role is individually. And I think that clarity and that simplicity is really key in different moments of the game, where the ball is, where the pitch is, what the state of the game is. That's so important. And of course, you do need leaders on the pitch to be able to kind of help in that. And obviously you bring in Paulinho, who's dead central in the pitch and has got a lot of experience, obviously just been to the Bundesliga, came back, was at Fulham previously. And I think for me, when you speak about Tottenham and what that team's going to look like, it looks like they're starting to develop a bit more of a spine of a team that you know that are going to be dead certs and going to start, whereas maybe the last few years we've been a little bit confused with that.
I think as well, Roy, to answer your question, and Steph, again, spot on, I just think the fact is, when you get to a certain part of the pitch, I think the great thing about Frank is he will let them express themselves in those areas and not try and overcomplicate it and trying to change them into something they're not. Because I think that's one thing as a lot of coaches do. They try and change players' attributes in certain areas of pitch, which they can't do. I've experienced this at Southampton at times when I'm asked to do something and it wasn't quite my strength, but I'll do it because I'm a player, I can adapt, but you're not going to get the best out of me. I do feel like the certain players, like Paulinho is a big one for me. He will help other players get into the right positions so they can show their attributes. And I think that's one key thing you spoke about, the Brentford players, which are not, again, have come up the leagues. He got the best out of them because he knew where they would be effective on the field. And I think that's the important key for him. That's why I feel he's got everyone on board. And I would only question for me, Steph, I don't know if you agree, but their actual squad depth going forward. Obviously, Arsenal had a lot of injuries recently. How they would cope with that.
And that was sort of how I was going to round off this little bit, which was to follow up on that with Theo. Those who backed Postecoglou quite a lot would say he went so long at times without Romero and Mickey van der Ven, and that is such a big difference for Tottenham. Their win percentage with them is over 52. It's 25% without. So that is how crucial those two are. Romero was linked with a move away and has now been made captain. I think has signed a new contract as well, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. So, but keeping them fit has to be the platform for everything else.
Yeah, it's massive, and I think that's what I mean about the spine of the team. It's so critical that you're able to get them types of players, because Romero and Van der Ven and their defensive kind of attributes like Theo talked about. They are able to do what they can do in that system because it is their strengths. They're able to go 1v1. They're able to go 1v1 against Haaland. If there's anyone that's running in behind, they're able to stop that because Van de Ven's so quick and they cover each other. But I think, they only played 18 games together last year. Obviously, the win percentage is higher, but in terms of Tottenham season, there was a lot more games that they didn't play. And I think you can so tell the difference in terms of with and without the ball when them two are together. And Romero's just been made captain. I think when you do miss that captain and that leadership capability, especially in the back line, I know that Rob's probably going to come on and say, especially with the goalkeeper and that back four, and whether it's a back four or back five, it's so important that you have them relationships and that consistency with and without the ball.
Yeah, Rob Green waiting to talk to us after a contrasting weekend for some goalkeepers, would you say, Robert?
Well, I got a call this afternoon saying, "Are you free? Are you available this evening?" And I thought, well, who's hosting? Oh, yeah, it can only be one thing. So, we'll skate over the goalkeepers doing well. Let's go to the ones who've had a bit of a tricky weekend.
Now, come on. When we did West Ham Chelsea together on Friday, I tried to see both sides of when you were talking about goalkeepers. It was only towards the end when you started complaining about the ball that I thought, oh, come on.
Oh, well, you haven't you wait for the excuses I've got for James Trafford.
Well, hang on a minute. It feels a little bit harsh to hammer or even criticise Trafford that too much for various reasons, really. Only his second start for City, it wasn't just on him how that second goal went in. And surely there's an argument that players need to get used to the goalkeeper as much as goalkeepers need to get used to the players. No?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a few moments within that game. There's a moment with Reinders. He's been pressed all the way back into the 6-yard box. There was a moment with Rico Lewis and then Trafford himself coming out with Kudus. So it all wasn't going swimmingly in the first half. But I will say it was his second game. In short passes, James Trafford against Wolves was 15 out of 15. Perfect. Up until that point against Spurs, he was 10 out of 10. The first time he's given the ball away short in his Manchester City career, he gets punished. And that's the brutality of goalkeeping and being in the Premier League.
Was it all on him, that second goal? And we talked about this a little bit on Saturday afternoon as well. Look, his pass to Nico was on his wrong foot, but Nico was running towards him whilst knowing that he had a man up him and still demanding the ball. Is it all on him?
Well, he doesn't have to give it to him, first and foremost. I think
last time I try and be sympathetic here. I'm trying to help.
No, but it's the big point. It's all about angles. And the first angle is Richarlison's press. And it's such a good press to go round and curve to cut off one side, which is brilliant. The second problem is Trafford stops the ball. As soon as it stops the ball, you're dead, and everybody knows the angle of the pass you're going to give it to. That's why the angle of the pass was bad to Rico Lewis, and from there, it's curtains really. But if you look at it again, if he moves the ball and continues the ball across his body, then he's got options out wide. I think it's Oscar Bob who's high and wide on the right, pointing, saying, we can have it over here. It's free. And he's just not got that angle on it. But the lack of movement, and you guys touched on it before, the lack of movement from the Manchester City players, we talk about rotations and things like that. It's basically movement off the ball, isn't it? And you know where you're going. There isn't much. And the only player that is moving is the one he tries to give it to. So it's not perfect from Trafford. It's a long way from perfect. It's a long way from perfect from the other 10 as well.
Rob, when you're a goalkeeper, right, this is one thing that really frustrates me at times is, I play with Olivier Giroud, and we had this issue at Arsenal at times when you're trying to play out from the back and then you get, obviously, pressed and then you get punished. Why not? When you know Tottenham are a pressing team at this moment in time, you can tell by the energy levels in them. Why not as a goalkeeper? Can you not recognise? And I know it's his second game, but he's had a whole year in the Championship as well. Why would you just not recognise, let's just go long for the next 20 minutes? Is this the fact that he's been told by Pep and he can't go against what the manager's saying, then he won't play in the following week? Because this is one thing for me. I used to hate that ball as a winger when my back's against the goal It's not my strength. Just as a goalkeeper, why would you not just go long?
He
nothing wrong with it.
No, he went long 5 times prior in the game, out of 15. So he'd gone short 10, he's gone long 5. So it's not like everything was short. They didn't win any of those balls long. There was one that drifted through and had an inkling of an opening, but it wasn't a successful ball. So whether that played anything onto in his mind, whether the fact that it was a goal kick and he just received the ball, I think that's another thing, that you're there going, right, I'm going to receive the ball here, therefore he's going to move there, he's going to move there, and that's the rotation. That's where I've got to play the ball. So you're almost a bit predetermined. But I think you're right, Theo. There's sometimes you recognise the danger, and that's something that's gone out of the game. And that's what I used to pull my hair out at Chelsea under Maurizio Sarri. We'd say, Capo, you have to play long. You have to play long, Capo. Play short, sorry. And they go, no, we're playing away from home at somewhere. We're under the cosh. Just launch it. And they wouldn't. And it's something that's the individual thought within games has kind of gone out of it. And that's quite evident from sort of watching it time and time again. You see it over and over again at all different standards of the leagues and all the way through the pyramid. And you see players getting caught out all the time.
Rob, I think for me, I think you probably hit the nail on the head in the sense that it was a goal kick. So I think when you're starting to do build up from the back in terms of maybe the match day -1 or match day -2 against these opponents, that's something that, being there at the club and probably having done it myself, that is definitely a focus going on to the game. It's like how you're going to manoeuvre the opponents, how you're going to get an advantage, and I think that's probably what's hampered his decision, because it's from a standing start, it's from that dead ball situation. But I actually think Nico's run into the box is probably too early, so he's actually coming into the box down the line of the ball rather than actually being further away and coming outside the box, which it worked quite a lot during the game. But I thought the pass should have been to Cherki. Nico actually drags the player down. I don't know whether it was Sarr or Bentancur, but actually Cherki's the free player and he actually can play in between Richarlison and the other pressing player. But I agree, I think for me the worst thing about it was the actual timing of the ball. I think if you're going into half-time 1-0 down, it actually changes the game, this perspective, quite a lot, and maybe that does come with a little bit of inexperience at this level, but I think it's harsh just to kind of batter him for the last 2 games in his first Premier League starts for City.
Yeah, but then if you listen to the numbers that Rob said, everything else is bad. We're talking about one mistake in 25 short passes, aren't we? I think.
To play that way, though, chappers, you have to be so precise. And that's what a lot of teams, like we speak about maybe Burnley a couple of seasons ago when they came under Company, and that if you actually watch that Burnley team trying to play, it's exactly what a lot of teams are trying to do. Every top team does it. Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester City, Tottenham to a point now with Vicario. Maybe they play a little bit more direct, but actually the patterns in the play, Leeds tried to do it against Everton on Monday night. And you have to be spot on with absolutely everything. There's no like room for error whatsoever. So, but obviously when you're playing against a top pressing side in Tottenham who are full of confidence at the minute, them errors become harsh.
Just going to go to St James's Park. Remember, we've got Newcastle against Liverpool from 8 o'clock. You won't miss anything with us during the 3-hour Monday night club. Was it tasty when Liverpool came out to warm up, Ailey?
It was indeed, Mark. This Newcastle crowd, they are loud at the best of times, but if they don't like something, they're pretty quick to let you know, and Liverpool certainly felt that as they came out to the warm-up. Huge boos from those that are in the stands here already at St James's Park. It's a lovely evening, so I think quite a few supporters will be taking their time getting to the ground, but those that are in here certainly made their thoughts clear when Liverpool came out of the tunnel. It's going to be a cracking atmosphere here tonight. Looking forward to it.
It really is. Back with Ailey lots over the course of the show. Jack Draper at the US Open. Katie Smith.
Yeah, he's 2 sets to love up now against the Argentine qualifier Federico Gomez in his first round match. I think rankings-wise, we always thought this should be fairly straightforward, but a bit of intrigue over Jack Draper's form considering his injury coming into this. He's ranked world number 5, but he's had this problem with his serving arm, and we saw a bit of that at the end of the second set, some tightness, a double fault. It brought Gomez back into the set. Draper, though, immediately breaking back on the second time of asking, serving it out. So a set away now from joining both Cam Norrie and Emma Raducanu in the second round here.
Thank you. That's on Sports Extra if you want to listen to that. If you were playing now, Rob, and I can't believe the game has changed that much for this question. So this was maybe how you did it anyhow. How would you approach corners from a goalkeeping point of view? Because I'm watching a lot of them flap around at the moment. Well, I'm watching two in particular over the weekend flap around. But yeah,
he didn't get close enough to flap around the Bayindir. He's just wandering.
It was like he was out for a Sunday walk.
It was. I think there was a lot of predetermined movement and nerves involved every corner there. But and it is nerves. It is about holding your nerve, and it's about holding your position in there. And you've got to. The one thing is so hard, and you look at what Bayindir did. You look at Hermansen. You look at against the Arsenal players moving across. Is everybody, when you're focusing on the ball, everybody rushes across in front of you, and your desperation to get to the ball first, your natural instinct is to go with them, and so you immediately get dragged in towards the near post. Now, the ball very, very rarely gets in there because you've got players lined up there to defend it. So to hold your nerve and say, I've done this 1,000 times, I'm the man, I can do this, is so hard in that moment, because your instinct is, my God, there's 12 players rushing across me, is obviously going to go there. So that's one of the key things, and that's where a lot of them are struggling right now.
I mean, Rory, does it feel, I don't know how historical you want to be here, does it feel that corners seem to be causing more problems than they have done in the last decade?
I think that might be statistically true. I don't know off the top of my head, chappers. But then I don't think it would be legitimate to say that like corners are more important now than they have been previously. If you think about the reaction of an English crowd to the ball going out for a corner, that has passed down through generations. People cheer when their team wins a corner because they think, something might happen now. So I think corners and set pieces have always been really important. Obviously, that goes without saying. I think what it looks like from the outside now is there is much more, predetermined is a great word for it, there's much more like patterns being run, almost like offensive plays in the NFL. Like there are set patterns for players to run in a way that there probably were when Rob and Theo were playing. Rob obviously wouldn't have been involved in it, he was a goalkeeper. I'm not sure what Theo's job would have been in the box, whether he had a specific run to make, as a player not necessarily renowned for his height. But I think I think that's the change. It's much more deliberate. It's much more scientific, effectively, that teams have worked out. There's been a bit of a shift in the way that data looks at corners, because when kind of data first became a thing, corners look really inefficient because you need, I think, 9 corners to get a shot on goal, and then another. It might be, you might get a goal 1 out of every 50 corners.
It's a 4%, I think.
Unless you play Manchester United. But I think now people see them as low-hanging fruit. That it's a really easy place to improve, and if you can become just a little bit better at corners, you can reap massive rewards. So I think there's a lot of work has gone into making those set patterns that players run at corners. I think that has advanced rapidly in the last 2 or 3 years.
And as well, when you look at the players now, guys, in the penalty areas, I feel now, I don't know if you agree, Rob, but players aren't scared of goalkeepers anymore. I was terrified of goalkeepers. I wouldn't be near them because they would just shove you out of the way. They would let you know they're there. These times, they just don't want to get involved with the argy-bargy, you would just call it, really. And no one's afraid of them. I would always get out of the way. I just wasn't my strength. And I even remember actually going into a corner and putting myself in a position where you spoke, Roy, about the near post area. And I actually ended up scoring an own goal. They put me in the front of and it hit me. So you put me in, you exposed me in the weakness, but the teams will find that weakness in an area now. They will scan the players, they'll get the messages across, and they recognise that I was in an area, and they put it there, and I couldn't see, and it hit me and went in. But Rob, I don't know, do you feel the goalkeepers now they're more afraid of the players than the players are afraid of the actual goalkeepers?
There is an expectation from the goalkeepers, you're right, Theo, that if you get touched, then you will get a foul. Yeah. And that doesn't come from the Premier League. That comes from European football, South American football. That you get, and there is a higher bar in the Premier League where you turn around and say there is physical contact. It's not a foul. They have the right to stand there or make it awkward. We've seen Ben White trying to take goalkeepers' gloves off, things like that. that's slightly the other side of the bar. But now you're seeing teams doing it purposely, and the key thing, you touched on it before with the press and things like that, and the movement, is the timing. The timing of the runs, when they get in there, you don't know where they are. Oh, they've come across me. Oh, they're in front of me. I can't get there. It should be a foul, but they're not actually doing anything. And the expectation is that you're getting it, and there's a lot of bewilderment in there from the goalkeepers, because all of a sudden they're coming into games where that level of security isn't there.
Rob, in your opinion, do you think, obviously we're speaking about the delivery, we're speaking about the runs from the attacking point of view, but do you think in general that defending from corners isn't at the level it probably is used to? Because say, for example, you take Arsenal, they do that same corner routine every single time where they all start the back of the 6-yard box, they make all the same runs, but yet not many teams are being able to actually stop it. In terms of, do you think people's individual defending that have been given them roles are able to protect goalkeepers to allow them to come and get the ball?
You're right, it's becoming harder because the refs are now clamping down on it. We've seen this season, at the start of the season, they're saying, right, there's no blocking, there's no holding. What they don't do, and what no one's worked out yet, is you can't give away a penalty if you haven't kicked the ball. So stop them before they've even taken the corner. So if you block them off, so if you're up against Arsenal and you create your own wall beyond the far post, and it's blocking the timing of the runs, so it delays those runs across the near post. If the corner isn't taken, you watch the replays of the goals on Sunday, Arsenal only had 2 corners. It's incredible, scored 2 goals. But both of them, the players are allowed to run all the way across, you're right, and no one actually makes any contact with them because they're so scared. If you do that before the corner's taken, then they're never going to get there. So I think that gives the goalkeeper a greater chance, because there isn't that distraction, there isn't that physical nature of the players actually arriving.
But I think I pitched the idea.
Because you are looking so confused.
No, I'm not looking confused. I'm partly just thinking, and this may be very, very, very naive and leave me open to ridicule, but would it help if defenders just went back to trying to win the header on the corner?
I think they are.
Well, no, but my point would be there's so much blocking, wrestling, so on and so forth, and and the constant debate between zonal and man. If big man mark big man in the Premier League and try, I know it's a bit old school, but could that help?
Well, I wouldn't have had my own goal, wouldn't I?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Clinical, Theo.
What about even like goalkeepers' positioning? Can that not change? Just do something different out of the ordinary that we've not seen, maybe?
Rob, can I throw one in as well? What if there were no defenders in the box?
All that, yeah.
If you clear the
no
box.
defenders in the box whatsoever.
If you just as a thought experiment, I'm not seriously suggesting it, but is a lot of the issue for the keepers appears to be that there's a lot of traffic. So if the keeper has a clear run at it, does that not help? And presumably, if there's no defenders around and the keeper gets blocked off by an attacker, the referee can see the foul a bit more clearly. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the amount of blocking from the attacking teams. So I think there's a lot of players in the box who are not trying to win the ball.
Yeah, I think.
No, you look as confused as I did 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, there is a theory in there. When we used to play Stoke and Bolton and our most successful side at West Ham, to defend those, Steve Clark was the assistant, and he said, "Don't want any defenders. Clear the road for Rob. Just let him come." And you just have to get right. Okay, I take the onus on me. I'm just going to come and clean everyone out. And it was fair game, but that was nearly 20 years ago. It's slightly different, but I do think the old school one of sticking 4 up front for defending a corner, make them change their mind, something like that might throw them. But yeah, the timing of the runs, the blocking of the runs is becoming harder and harder.
We will let you go, Rob. Thank you. See you soon.
Enjoy the game.
Right, Rob Green with us on the Monday Night Club. From your defender's perspective, has Rory just changed football?
No, Rory should be gaffer. That's all I'm saying. Bring him in.
It's one of my two, Steph. It's one of my two wouldn't say beliefs on goalkeeping, my 2 wild theories on goalkeeping. One, I think we have way too many walls from free kicks. I think if you've got a free kick that is
do you know who
more than
also
25 yards out, don't have a wall.
Wayne Rooney's been talking about that in the office. That's one of his theories. Why...
Imagine using the sentence Wayne Rooney's been in the office talking about that.
So
does Rooney also not think there should be a wall?
No, yeah, that's one of his theories. Yeah, that maybe the wall does more harm than good.
Don't want to say that it's two of the great footballing minds thinking alike, but I'm not going to not say it. And the other is, I do just wonder whether I think I picked that thing of a defensive wall blocking off Arsenal's back post run last season and was roundly mocked, as I should have been. But
who by?
Whoever I was trying to work with, Steph, to be honest, just trying to create content. I think someone's going to have to do something relatively radical, I think, to really undercut it. It seemed towards the end of last season that teams had started to get a bit of a grip on it, and I wonder whether Leeds, as it's the first time they'd faced it, were a little bit kind of, obviously they were forewarned, they maybe weren't forearmed, but I think to try and counteract it, someone is going to have to think outside the box in some way to get around it.
I mean, a lot of teams do tend to put more players up front to try and counteract how many bodies is in there, and obviously being a centre-half and having a goalkeeper like, say, Karen Bardsley, who was 6'4", commanding in the box, like for me and her, and I like to head the ball, so for me, like, less bodies is better. Like, you want the area clean as much as possible, so there's enough space.
Well, that's kind of what I meant. You know, for a lot of centre halves and defenders, the challenge is to get your head on the ball on the corner.
But to be able to do that, chappers, I need someone to be able to stop runners that are going to come across, because they're going to be running forwards and I'm going to have to try and see where the space is and where the ball is. So there's like lots of things going on. So I did like half zonal, I did like people blocking, but not all one or the other, because I don't think it can work. I think if you just marking players, it becomes so messy, and if you lose someone, then it just becomes absolute carnage. But I think for me, it's for Arsenal, obviously they have the profile of players. They have, I mean, their back four, you're speaking about 3 of the defenders are 6 foot, whereas Timber goes and scores 2 goals. So you're trying to focus on them 3 6'4" centre halves and left backs, but actually it's probably the smaller defender that goes and scores 2 goals. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done.
Staying with Arsenal, we're going to talk about Max Dowman next. Remember, we've got Newcastle-Liverpool from 8 o'clock. You won't miss anything with us. And at the start of the season, the former Arsenal Academy coach, Timothy Williams, spoke to 5 Live Sport about Dowman and his ability to win penalties.
The one thing I always tell people about Max is, 1, he was humble, but 2, he was always ready for the next challenge, constantly. And probably throughout the majority of his time in the academy, and of course he's still in the academy as a under 16, he's always trained and played up. So with that challenge being continuously something he's faced, it means that Max's development, of course, from tactical perspective, he can manage the game from a physical perspective as well. He's just been able to really grow leaps and bounds, and it, of course, has just shot up in the last couple of years, and especially this year. And I think the key thing is that his super strength, which is carrying the ball, as we're seeing in the first team, has been something he's been doing throughout the academy. His left foot is brilliant in terms of carrying the ball, protecting the ball. We can see when he's driving forward, he's putting his arms out because he knows and he expects the physical challenge is going to come. And of course, he won the two penalties, one against Villarreal, one against AC Milan.
So Theo, you were 16 when you made your debut. Steph, you were 14 when you made debut. I don't have your stats, Rory, for when you first had an article published.
I was older than 14, I can assure you.
What do you think his biggest challenge is over this season, actually, Theo?
Biggest challenge is the outside noise would be the biggest challenge, I feel, and how he copes with even his school life, that balance of walking out in the street now, everyone recognising him with the social media world, all of that. I didn't have that coming through. We didn't have that when we were younger, so it was very different. We had the paparazzi, which were probably a little bit more intrusive, should we just say, actually, physically. However, I do feel, the support network around him's got to be important. That's the main key. But you just look at the vast amount of money that these days is involved in football. Will he get turned by that as well? That's a big challenge now because, obviously a lot of earnings is it's only a short career. I know that for sure. So I think he's got all those challenges very different to me coming through. The pressure of winning the title in a team who are expected to win something this year. I think that's very different to when I joined the club. It was a more of a transitional side now all of a sudden. But he's got ability where you just can't teach it, because he just plays with that freedom. And I think I've heard people talk about the love of football being boring at times to watch. Watch him, he is not boring to watch, because he is so positive every time he has it. And that's what I love about these players that are just positive, and they're so refreshing. I think what's really fascinating is Mikel will allow him to do that, because that's his strength. And he carries the ball. He's quicker with the ball. He's like Messi. I remember playing against Messi when he was running off the ball. Well, he's not quick. I don't know what is so weird. Maybe because I was quicker than most, but when he had the ball, he would just glide past people, glide past me with ease. And he's got that. He's got the stop-start. And when you have that, the low centre of gravity, defenders they get tired. And I feel like he can do it all day as well. I think he just loves it. Yeah, that's his biggest challenge, is probably the outside noise and the social media world. But I do hope it goes well for him. I'm pretty sure it will. He's got a great club right now. He's got some amazing players to play with. So, and Bukayo Saka, I think you look at someone like him as well, away from football. What a player to learn from. What a player to learn from away from football. So I think I'd be asking so many questions to him if I was in right now.
Theo, were you really surprised at how confident he was when he came on the pitch against Leeds? I think his first touch was actually just getting at the left back and just driving and dribbling, and you're thinking sometimes maybe previous people that have made Premier League debuts at a young age, it's like maybe just the first one might just pass it to my teammate, like just settle in. But literally the first drive was, I'm going forward.
Yeah, it's the trust, isn't it? It's the trust. When you have that element in the team where the players want to constantly give you the ball. It's like when the players get booked to the fullbacks, and then that player who's just gotten booked doesn't get the ball for the next 5-10 minutes. No, keep on giving him the ball. And what I found really interesting as well, it reminds me, I remember when I came through and my first game, I would watch it over and over and over on Match of the Day, and he'll be doing that. He will be 100% doing that, and endlessly watching that, because I was that player. I was always wanting to know what the guys would say and, look at that side of it and see if there's anything they can improve on. But the praise is going to continue, because he is gifted. To play in the Premier League at 15 in an Arsenal team who expected to win the league is a different kind of level to what I focused with. Mine was more coming back from the World Cup. That was the biggie for me. I think the great thing I really like as well, he can relate to a lot of the academy players coming through. The generation side of it, he can connect and have those connections with those players, the Marsley, Skellies, the Ethans. There's so many younger players, Declan Rice. There's so many young players around his domain. Bukayo Saka, I had, guys that are 30 plus, so I couldn't really relate at times. And I think that's a good point for him. He's got players that probably have similar things that he's interested in, which I think is really important for his development going forward away from the football as well.
Is helping to settle him into the squad, is that more the players than it is Arteta's job? Does that kind of fall on them to make sure that he feels welcome? Because no matter how confident he is on the pitch, he's a 15-year-old kid who's gone into an elite football dressing room. That has to be in some way intimidating.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it would be intimidating, but I get the impression that he's a player who, he's well regarded around the club. He's very quiet, keeps himself to himself, but when he's on the pitch, he's not quiet anymore, because he just loves the ball. He just wants it. And I think he's not intimidated by anyone. And I was not intimidated when I played football. Because I knew what I was doing, and he knows what he's doing, because he trusts his strengths, and the teammates, going back to it, they trust him. They see it every day in training, and, we're not savvy to that, but I just, who knows what can happen in his career? Obviously got this World Cup coming up as well. The injuries you talk about, the opportunities you're going to get is the fact having someone like Bukayo Saka ahead of him, and he is, of course he is. How patient can he be? How patient will he be? Can he operate in other positions? I'm sure he definitely can. He can play in the 10, but there's a lot of 10s now, with Eze added into that mix now, and it will put a lot of pressure on the kid's shoulders to expect him to be perfect.
I mean, the other thing, actually, Steph, Theo listed several players. The other one that springs to mind is Ødegaard himself, actually, who at 15 went to Real Madrid and had that experience. So there's another, the captain himself has had similar experiences.
Yeah, and I think when you've been through that as a player, you know how it feels in that moment, and nobody else can tell you how it feels. Like, for me, you speak about Miles Lewis-Skelly, like his journey into the first team, and now in England, probably regular, wanting to go to World Cup is scary over the last few months. And I think for me, the biggest thing is the environment that he's going to be in. This is a club that is obviously striving to win trophies, and there's going to be a certain standard, there's going to be an expectation. But the crazy thing is, he's probably not even in the same changing rooms as these boys, because he's probably too young. So, like, that integration is very, very important, but also that balance of realising he's only young, he's still a kid, he's going to learn. And I think, like, I relate back to, like, Phil Foden when he burst on the scene from Man City. There were so many different calls for him to go on loan, get this experience, this first-team experience, and Pep really guided him in a way where he didn't really play that much in them first few seasons, but that timing of when he introduced him to start and then them big games and being under that little bit more pressure was really crucial. And I can see Arteta really, really guiding him in a certain way, because you can see within that 20-minute cameo he's going to be a superstar in the making.
The other, and Theo mentioned this with the competition for places there, Rory, and Arsenal had it a bit, if you believe all the reports over the course of the summer, had a little bit of it with Nwaneri before they got Nwaneri to sign a new contract, is that young players now, and I'm not saying that this is the case with Dan, I don't want Arsenal fans piling in, but young players have a lot of power now because they are wanted by a lot of European elite clubs if they aren't going to get the opportunity at the club they've come through at 15, 16, 17. And that is something that more and more managers and directors of football have to take into account, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess it's a balance, isn't it? So with Nwaneri, if you give him his debut at the age that he was 15 as well, wasn't he, Nwaneri, when he first played for Arsenal? So if you give him his debut at 15, he will naturally think, well, I'm kind of ready, I've made that step. So the next step is next season to maybe play, I don't know, whether it be 10 games or make 10 appearances or whatever. I want to do that. And then the season after that, well, I want to kind of, by that stage, he's been around for 2 years and he'll, time in football works in a weird way. So by the time he's sort of bordering 18, he will feel, well, I'm an established part of this team. I want to be playing more. That's completely natural for him and his own kind of personal view of his development. And it is generally the rule that players don't come through as easily at successful teams. If you look at players who've kind of burst through and established themselves, whether it's Rashford, who basically got his break because Manchester United ran out of strikers, and so he played in a Europa League game against Midtjylland, I think, then came into the team for the Premier League game against Arsenal, and then that was Marcus Rashford. Didn't change his talent, but he needed the opportunity. Those opportunities are harder to come by in a team that is going for the league title, that has Bukayo Saka on the right wing, Martin Odegaard as a 10 with Havertz, Eze, Madueke can play out there as well. You've got Nwaneri himself. You've got all these other options there, and Downman will be in a queue to an extent, and he's obviously got the talent to maybe skip a few steps, but it's unlikely he's going to displace Bukayo Saka at any point in the next couple of years. So I guess it puts the clubs in a position where they have to kind of manage expectations effectively. You have to say, look, you are really important to us. We will give you enough football, but you are part of a squad, and the best place for you to be is here, playing for one of the best teams in the world. The team, I presume, I don't know about Downman, but I presume that he has supported since he was a kid. Living out your dream, rather than thinking, I'm 18, I've only played 20 times, maybe I'll go and sign for Borussia Dortmund. They need to avoid that, and that's a test of the management of the club as much as anything else, to make sure that you give them the opportunity without kind of allowing them to feel that they're being frustrated in some way. But it's the very definition of a nice problem to have. Oh no, we've got too many talented 15-year-olds. That's not a bad position to be in.
It's the Monday Night Club. We're on until 10 tonight to bring you everything from St James's Park. The teams are in the tunnel at the moment. They're just about to leave that tunnel. Ailey Barber, it would be fair to say this is a very pumped up St James's Park.
It is indeed. I mean, it's pumped up at the best of times, but the team's now making their way out onto the pitch, and the atmosphere is fantastic. There is a huge banner to my right-hand side, though, that says, "Nothing is achieved alone. We are a city, a whole population." And that is certainly directed towards Alexander Isak, who they feel has used Newcastle as a platform to go into bigger and better things. Dan Burns said, actually, in an interview with the club TV channel, that nobody achieves anything on their own on a football pitch. It's all to do with the team and your teammates. And this Newcastle team will be desperate to go out there tonight and show that they can beat this Liverpool team, beat the Premier League champions as a unit and without their star man up front. It is the first meeting since Newcastle did beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final, their greatest day that Alexander Isak was such a huge part of. So an element of sadness around the whole saga as well for Newcastle fans. But this is all about the Premier League. Newcastle haven't beaten Liverpool in the last 17 league meetings. Liverpool, they come here looking to make it 2 wins from 2 to start their title defence. Newcastle, same starting 11 as they had on Saturday. Liverpool, a couple of changes, problems at right back. Frimpong is injured, Gomez and Bradley only fit enough for the bench. And Arne Slot is confirmed in his pre-match interview. It will in fact be Szoboszlai who slots in there at right back, with Jones partnering the returning Gravenberch in midfield in the absence of McAllister. So a really pumped atmosphere, like you say here, Mark, and I'm really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, let me read you what Slot said to Sky on Szoboszlai at right back. He said, Gomez isn't ready to start yet. He can have an impact in the game, but starting comes too early. So the best is Szoboszlai. He's still an attacking midfielder, but because of his work rate and defending, we thought he could play there. It helps that Gravenberch is back because he's better at positioning than the midfielders we had last game. I'm expecting Newcastle to go 1v1 all over the pitch. Does that make sense to you, Steph?
Yeah, I think for me, in terms of Szoboszlai against probably Harvey Barnes today, Harvey Barnes likes to drive, he likes to come on the inside in terms of be on his right foot, and it's going to be difficult. I think obviously he's not a natural right back, but in terms of his physical output, I think it could be a good kind of proposition for Liverpool to have him there, but also to start them attacks from that right back position.
The fan perspective here, Theo, is we want to absolutely smash you this evening because you're trying to take our striker. Will any of that feed into the players?
I think there'll be an element of that as well, but having said that, they're all professional. They all understand there's an opportunity where their teammates could move on to a different club, and they will just get on with their job because they're
But they might not
in
understand his behaviour.
Well, it's interesting because when you see players that want to get a move, it's, as players, you kind of just accept it and you let them try to get on with it, to be honest, because you see on the other side of it, when players don't want to move, and then they're thrown in the, you know, in the shed, basically, training on their own stupid clock.
Even if they go AWOL.
I don't agree with that. That's the one thing I don't agree with. I feel like, you know, for someone like myself, I would always be clear and to do it in the right way. I think the fact that he's decided to, like you say, go AWOL is not ideal at all. But look, they'll forget about him because they're probably planning not to have him this year. And I feel like this game it's coming very, you know, nice and early, actually, to be honest, to get this saga over. I get the impression it's going to happen straight after this game, to be honest. Maybe an extra 30 or 40 million if Newcastle win or lose, we'll see. But look, I just think it's something that we want to see Isak play football. If it's Newcastle, great. If it's Liverpool, great, because he's an exceptional player and we should not be talking him in this way. And he's got a lot to obviously come back from if he stays at Newcastle.
Well, Craig Hope in the Mail, who's covered the story in intense detail, says that there's been a meeting at Isak's house today with Isak, Jamie Rubin, who's one of the co-owners, and a delegation from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. I don't know what canapes you put on in that situation. I don't know how Alexander Isak entertains. I don't know what you provide. It strikes me to be very stressful. But there is apparently, what Craig is reporting is that they have said that there is the possibility of a new contract if Isak reintegrates into the squad. So it may well be that it is for Newcastle that he plays.
That would be a heck of a turnaround, wouldn't it, Rory?
Well, it would be. I can understand why Newcastle, why Liverpool are getting booed at St James's Park. That's absolutely right. I think Liverpool have played it badly. I'm not quite sure what else they could have done. Maybe the offer that went in should have been higher. I think whatever their first offer is, Newcastle would have rejected anyway. But it strikes me that what's happened is that the way it's played out, both from Liverpool's point of view and Isak's point of view, is that it's kind of solidified the opinion of Newcastle's power brokers, PAF and the Rubin family, that they don't want to sell him. So that makes it looks to me like Isak's going to have to make the call. Does he bed in for the strike until like January and not play football for 4 months in a World Cup year, or does he reintegrate? Which I've got to admit, I think would be intensely awkward for everybody.
I think it would be awkward. I'm just thinking if that was someone that I understand in terms of there's a way that people want their careers to go, but I think Theo touched on it. I think from a professional point of view and being able to do your job while also trying to push for a move, you can still do both of them things and also pay respect to the team and the club, and whatever them conversations, them promises that potentially might have happened that he mentioned in his statement last week. You can see that the fans are angry, and coming from the northeast and having a few family members that are Newcastle supporters, it hasn't gone down well. So that integration back into the team might be okay, but to go back to St James's Park after everything that's gone on this last month would be really tough to come back to, in my opinion.
Joel Linton inadvertently just kicked Cody Gakpo in the head. Ailey Barber.
Yeah, Simon Hooper's going to have to try and calm things down here. The noise inside St James's Park is quite outstanding. In the first seconds of the game, Dan Burn won just a very straightforward defensive header. The place erupted. Yeah, it is feisty, it is noisy, it is beginning to translate onto the pitch a little bit. It's getting feisty out there as well. Joe Linton, with that, like you say, just catching Gakpo in the head, but Simon Hooper, no card shown, just trying to calm it down. It's 100 miles an hour just now. It's brilliant stuff. Still goalless.
It is frenetic, to say the least, at the moment at St James's Park, but they are underway, and it is goalless at the moment. It is the Monday Night Club all the way through until 10 o'clock, so it's like a listen along with this in the background between Newcastle and Liverpool. Rory Smith, Theo Walcott and Steph Houghton are with us. We'll talk about what on earth is going on with Rangers after the latest BBC News. Not for sale. Leeds have confirmed that they've signed James Justin from Leicester. That will be worth around £10 million, and the fullback will be the 10th summer arrival at Ellen Road. And in the last few minutes, Everton have announced the signing of Tyler Dibbling for an undisclosed fee. Now, that's believed to be in the region of £40 million. The 19-year-old joins Everton after being relegated with Southampton last season. That strikes me, Theo, as a good deal for Everton. At one stage, people were talking about 60 or 70 for Dibbling.
Yes, no, to be honest, you look at this current market, I think that's probably stands out. Yeah, they've kind of got him on the, not the cheap, but of course, but they've very good player, of course. I think the fact that they're in the new stadium as well, he will just thrive there. I think the personnel is around as well. I'll be intrigued to see where he actually fits in, because he's a player I feel he'll want to start. And I feel someone like Drewsbury Hall may have to drop back next to Idrissa Gueye, perhaps, and allow Tyler to have that free roam. But obviously,
so you then play him as a 10, do you, Dibbling? Then
I would. I like him. Well, I'd probably put Ndiaye there, actually, to be honest, behind maybe Barry, and then play Tyler on the right. But I just get this sense at times the work ethic would have to raise being at Everton Football Club. I think that's relevant to say when you play for Everton Football Club, you need to run. And at times, look, he, in a very poor Southampton team, he was working the socks off, but it's a different kind of pressure playing for Everton Football Club. But yeah, brilliant player. I do hope it goes well for him. But I think the stadium is having this new stadium, these new players, and this new personnel. It fits the bill for me. I think it's a really good move.
Also, and this may not be the most important thing here, Rory, but having watched Everton yesterday, I think if they have enjoyed Dewsbury Hall, Dibbling, and Grealish, that gives them the most number of players in a Premier League squad who barely wear their socks above their ankles.
That's crucially important. It's that there are points for style, chappers. No, I think what's really encouraging about Everton, and obviously playing the first game at the Hill Dickinson Stadium yesterday, it still feels weird calling it that, Bramley Moore Dock. is that this isn't going to be an Everton team that gets relegated. This is probably not going to be an Everton team that challenges for the title, but you never know. There is they might make a push for Europe, but you want to give fans kind of positive memories from that first season at the stadium. You want there to be a reason for fans to look forward to going, rather than just we're kind of grinding along in mid-table. And that kind of gives them a front five who all are more than capable of that, because Grealish is obviously the main attraction, the star attraction. But Diblin's a brilliant player to watch. Ndiaye's fantastic to watch. Barry is relatively raw, but has something that will excite Everton players. And Dewsbury Hall's a really creative midfielder. So that as a kind of as an enticement to go to Bramley-Moore Dock, to be the team that graces this new stadium for the first time, that has a real kind of significance to it, I think.
We'll talk more about Everton. We'll talk more about Jack Grealish a little while. Let's just go back to Ailey. Any sign of anything yet?
No, I mean, it is so frantic, this game. It's brilliant. I'm really, really enjoying it. It might be a game you have to be here to really enjoy. I don't know if you'll be enjoying it quite so much in the studio watching on the screen, but the atmosphere is superb. Jacob Murphy is doing quite a long warm-up at the moment in his full kit with a bib on. I don't know if that's because of that injury to Bruno Guimaraes. He looks okay out on the pitch, but certainly it looks like Jacob Murphy is warming up quite a lot at the moment. But Liverpool on the attack. Kerkez with the ball into the middle. Dan Burn wins the header. Cue the huge cheers from the Newcastle crowd.
Oh no, I'm enjoying it. It's just every time I look up, there are bodies everywhere, and the referee. And there's another one. Anthony Gordon just being clipped by Wirtz and Salah. Let's turn our attention away from the Premier League to the Scottish Premiership. We're going to talk Rangers next. A 1-1 draw with St Mirren on Sunday, still without a win in the league. Let's not forget they're 3-1 down heading into the second leg of their Champions League playoff against Club Brugge later this week. Former Rangers goalkeeper Cammy Bell was working for BBC Scotland across this weekend. I'm not sure it necessarily got worse this weekend, Cammy, although maybe you'll tell me, but it just continues the general air of frustration and anger, doesn't it?
Yeah, evening, guys. I think you've used that word there, frustration. That's certainly what sits with Rangers fans at the moment. They've been very frustrated with Russell Martin's team since he's came in as manager. I don't think his style of play has really clicked yet. Certainly his signings that he's brought in haven't hit the ground running, so there's been a lot of frustrations. And listen, Rangers Football Club's built on results. That's what it's built on. It's built on winning games of football and also looking across at the other team in the city, Celtic. And when they're going well and you're dropping points, that's when the frustration builds. And it's just not been good enough. I mean, draws with the likes of Motherwell, Dundee and then St Mirren domestically is nowhere near good enough for Rangers. And Russell Martin's hearing that certainly from the Rangers fans.
But isn't this just the start of something that they hope will be successful?
Yeah, listen, yeah, it is. But again, Rangers, you need instant success. And that's what the fans demand. Rangers and Celtic are miles ahead of every other club in Scotland financially. And again, the expectation that sits with both these clubs is so high that when you drop points against these other teams, and it's no disrespect to a Dundee or a St Mirren, because they're good teams domestically in Scotland, they're decent size, but Rangers should be blowing these teams away. Again, Celtic find a way to win. They've got 9 points out of 9 at the moment. Rangers just can't find a way to win. And also what the frustration is, I think, is the style that Russell Martin's playing isn't working. They're conceding far too many goals. I mean, if you put in the first 4 Champions League qualifiers, Panathinaikos and Victoria Pilsen home and away, and then you add in Motherwell and Dundee domestically, they gave up 107 opportunities to the opposition. That's not good enough. Rangers should be controlling games, dominating games, and they're not doing that.
But just on the goals they've conceded, and I'll let everybody else come in after this, and I take everything that you said there. I mean, the opening goal against Club Brugge can't be down